Welcome to Air Checks. This is the last week that of a 2-month series of featuring Orson Welles. Ceiling Unlimited from 1942 is a series focusing on aviation, both its history and its role in the war effort, sponsored by Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations. 15-minute episodes. CBS. Officially, a bad back and flat feet prevented Orson Welles from serving in World War II. Unofficially, he was not interested in enlisting. He preferred to contribute to the war effort using his voice and his art. He produced 2 radio programs to support the war, led a campaign to sell war bonds, and entertained troops with his Mercury Wonder show. Ceiling Unlimited celebrated the world of aviation, mixing history and stories from aviation workers and pilots in the present day. Produced simultaneously with Hello Americans. Frequent collaborators included composer/conductor Bernard Herrmann and actors Agnes Moorehead, Joseph Cotten, Arthur Anderson, Dan Seymour, George Coulouris, Ray Collins, Carl Swenson, Eustace Wyatt, Edgar Barrier, Bud Collier, and Frank Reddick. Here is Ceilings Unlimited.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. This new radio program is brought to you by the builders of Lockheed and Vega Aircraft. Its title,
Ceiling Unlimited.
All right. Rear gunner. Hey, you guys!
Navigator to pilot. I'm at the waist guns.
Where are the others?
Blacked out. Oxygen line pooped out.
Hey, this crate's beginning to look like a sieve.
Yeah, I'd sure hate to get caught in a ray now. Left rudder!
How'd you like that, Sukiyaki? Discouraging, ain't it?
as it turned back on its homeward journey, a running fight between the bomber and 18 Jap pursuit planes continued for 75 miles. 4 ships attacked from each side and were shot down with the side guns. The radio operator was killed, the engineer's right hand was shot off. 1 gunner was crippled, leaving only 1 man to operate both side guns. Although wounded, he kept firing, bringing down 3 more Zeros. While this was going on, 1 engine went dead, another was shot out, 1 gas tank was hit, windshield smashed, the radio was shot off, the oxygen system entirely destroyed. Out of 11 control cables, all but 4 were shot away. The rear landing wheel was blown off, 2 front wheels were both shot flat. 2 shells left gaping holes in the wings, and part of the tail was shot off. But it landed on its own airfield, under its own power at night, broken, crippled, but safe. And it would fly again. This is a true story. There are many like it. It's the story of an American plane that got home. This one was developed and built by the Boeing Company. It's also now being built by Douglas and by Vega. It's called the Flying Fortress. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have an all-star cast. Introducing Snoozy, Cactus Sal, Rose O'Day, Dry Martini, Birmingham Blitzkrieg, Johnny Reb, and Big Punk. Flying men like their planes too well not to name them. Ever hear of a boat or a horse without a name? Rattler, Phyllis, Baby Doll, Berlin Sleeper, Big Stuff, Alexander the Swoosh, all flying fortresses. That last name is a little confusing. Alexander the Swoosh. A swoosh is a cross between a swan and a goose. Just a pet name, because a flying fortress is just what it sounds like. A fortress that flies. Am I right?
They can't shoot our fortresses out of the air. And, brother, they've tried to.
We're outriding the best pursuit ships they've got.
We come home with 1,000 holes, but we come home.
She's built like the Brooklyn Bridge.
We brought down 13 Nazi fighters over Rouen without losing a plane.
Say, we've got Goering so nervous he's eating his medal.
Those boys ought to know. They're the flight crew talking. They're over the target day and night fighting fog and fire, riding the murderous sky, slugging it out with the best Hitler and Hirohito have to offer. We can take their word for it. Their testimonials are signed in blood.
And did you hear of the Flying Fort crew who came riding in on the tail assembly?
Yeah, the rest of it was shot away.
Ladies and gentlemen, we want you to get acquainted with the Flying Fortress. It's your plane. It's a great plane. You're paying for it. Your sons and husbands are flying it. This is your personal war. You win or lose, each of you. You are therefore requested to listen. The roots of aviation lead back to poetry and legend and dreamers. The first man to truly experiment on the theory of flight was Leonardo da Vinci, painter, philosopher, scientist, and inventor of the 16th century. He is the man who succeeded in all things but failed in one, to build a machine that would enable man to fly like a bird. Next, we come...
Excuse me, Mr. Wells.
Yes?
I don't think I'm given quite the credit I deserve. If we'd had engines in the 16th century, my airplane would have flown.
Leonardo da Vinci, what are you doing at the Lockheed Air Terminal in California?
You see, Mr. Wells, out there in limbo, I can't sleep nights hearing these flying fortresses roar by. I decided to come down and see what the century is up to in aviation.
You've come to the right place, Mr. da Vinci. I'd be delighted to show you around. We've made some improvements on your own models. May I introduce Rose O'Day? She's a big girl, isn't she? Ready to go places. Without an escort, too. Yes. Rose O'Day can take care of herself very well. We'd like you to meet the organized miracle of her motors. The timing, the pistons, hot in the cylinders, the valves, the wrist pins, the stroke, the bore. There's a lot of horsepower pulling at the pit. Thousands of horses coiled in the tight cylinders, ready to roar down the roadway of the sky. Let's hear it. Have we put enough life into your mechanical dream, Mr. da Vinci? We've given your bird a great heart. We've given her claws, too. That's the Rose O'Day. And that goes for the others, all the others, proud in their sky. We've built this murderous, beautiful plane, Mr. da Vinci, because we're fighting for our life. We're at war, and we must win.
If you recall, Mr. Wells, in my own experiments with war machines, I laid great stress on armor.
Oh, she's got that, too. Armor plate protection. She can go 300 miles an hour and better at 35,000 feet, and she can drop her bombs in a smokestack.
It sounds unbelievable.
The enemy learned to believe it the hard way. They learned to believe the 103-foot wing spread and 73-foot length and 16-foot tail height. There are about 30,000 separate parts that go into a fortress, 3.5 miles of wiring, and lots of rubber. Are you listening in, Adolf? Taking it all down? Well, if you're waiting for the bomb sight figures or production figures, you won't get them. We can give you a hint, though. Pencil ready? Rate of production on this plane has increased several 100% since Pearl Harbor. That hurt, didn't it? Put that in your pipe and choke on it. Arrest is no military secret. You read the communiques, or should we refresh your memory a bit?
Railroad yards demolished.
Wrecked aerodrome.
Over North Sea.
Battled off 20 Nazi fighters, shot down 6. No losses.
Amiens.
15 direct hits on yards.
Rotterdam.
Shipyards blasted.
Milton.
Demolished aircraft factory. 1 fort, down 13 fighters.
Of 88 Nazi planes shot down over Europe during October, flying fortresses accounted for 70. Flying fortresses lost, 7. All precision bombing at high altitude, 10 to 20,000 feet. Scientific, Mr. da Vinci, and very deadly. An old American custom. That's not counting the Pacific area. It was a flying fort that carried MacArthur out of the Philippines. Colin Kelly smacked a Haruna-class battleship from a flying fort. There's New Guinea in the Battle of Midway, where flying fortresses helped to scatter a Jap invasion fleet. The Solomons. Yes. They're writing history in the sky. And don't think the Axis doesn't know it.
È una cosa terribile! È grande pericolo di nuovi aeroplani di Flying Fortress! 이거가 니스토노토, 이거도 Japan, 이르디도 쿠트노 Flying Fortresses!
Die Besonders darauf aufmerksam machen, die Gefahren dieses neuen Luftschiffs nicht zu unterschätzen, diesen Flying Fortress.
Yes, it's on their mind. Day and night. They're worried. They've seen it, heard it, tasted it. Over Rouen, Cherbourg, Abbeville, Dieppe, Havre, Utrecht, Rotterdam, Buna, Rabaul, and points east, west, north, south. They didn't get much sleep this past summer. They're going to get less from now on. It'll be one long daylight of hell. And the forts will be up there like an umbrella.
Say, you. Where's your visiting badge?
Oh, right in my pocket.
Wear them on the outside, both of you.
Sure.
Healthier. First visit inside the plant?
That's right.
Lot to see. That wing jig over there is 3 stories high. And these little grommets. I've got 1,000 of them right here in my hand. They're so small you can lose one under a fingernail. Interested in statistics?
Very much.
Well, it takes 200,000 tools to build a fortress.
truly an amazing spectacle, this assembly line.
Just an American way of getting things done quickly, Mr. Da Vinci. We did it with automobiles. Now we're doing it with planes. 24-hour shift. Men and women working like bees, joining the plane together unit by unit. Then the motors are miraculously hoisted down, set in place. Quickly, their hands seem to say. Let's put it together quickly. We're fighting time. They need this plane somewhere. They need our work. They need our skill, our hands. We understand without whips, without fear or panic. We understand as free men do.
Your plane is ready, Mr. Wells.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Da Vinci, would you like to take a ride in a flying fortress? We're delivering this one to England and point secret.
You mean direct?
From factory to front with stopover, of course, check oil and gas and water and have the windshield cleaned.
I'm ready.
Good, but first let's meet the crew.
What, all those men?
Well, not quite. 18 of them are the ground crew and mechanics who know their jobs and keep the plane in vitamin shape. Takes 9 men to fly a fort. Step out, boys. Meet Mr. Da Vinci.
Bombardier. I sit in a plastic glass nose with a secret bomb sight and 2 machine guns just in case. I like the eggs. TNT.
Navigator. I sit in back of the Bombardier. I shoot the sun and the stars and anything else that comes by.
Listen.
And you, sir?
I'm the high man. I watch the instruments, and I bring baby home, or what's left of her.
Co-pilot. If we're both out, she flies herself home.
And 4 of us take care of the center of the plane, more or less. 2 radio men, 2 engineers. We also double on brass. You know, the kind bullets come in.
Well, that leaves 1 more.
I'm the tail gunner way out in center field.
What's your job?
I give them the kiss of death. I knock them down with all I got. Wonderful view back there, but lonely.
Ready to go, Mr. Wells.
Thank you. Up the plank, Mr. Da Vinci.
I'm a little suspicious about the center of gravity, but I expect she'll fly. Oh, we're moving, Mr. Wells.
We leave the ground. This huge monster of metal, heavier than a building, rising with the ease and liberty of birds. These 1,000 thundering horses gallop through the marvelous air, and we're free. We defy the sun, the earth's friction. The motors beat like a giant single heart. Man has learned to control the sky. Man is at the helm of his century. Man can make assassins out of angels so that he may live in freedom. He is well armed. He is lightning, riding the air. He is the stroke of thunder. Eastward to the mountains, the Rockies, Nevada, Wyoming, straddling the Wasatch, over the teeth of the Big Horn, the mighty ranges, into the latitude of timber toward the origin of rivers, then the brushwood, the green states, the golden states of wheat and corn, Nebraska, Iowa, eastward toward the cities with their thunder of machines and the giant promises, over the steel states, Ohio, Pennsylvania, over the coal and iron areas, over homes, Kansas, Missouri. This plain is for you, Illinois. Your steel is our wings. We fly for your protection. This fortress is the armor for your avenues. This plain is your promise to the free world. Virginia, Carolina, Dakota, Wisconsin. We fly over you. Take your greeting with us. Bring the name America to the burning lands. We bring the hope that name is. Past the 45th meridian and the white beachheads and the blue Atlantic beneath. Speed onward into the night. Oh, flying fortress. Oh, living answer to the eyes of nations. They wait in England, in Africa, in China, in the heroic streets of Stalingrad. The free people wait and watch the sky for your coming. The people enslaved pray for your coming. Fly true. Honor to the hands which built you, the workers, the men and women. Honor to our allies who receive these. Honor to the brave airmen who raid daily into battle, who perish in flame and water. Honor to the pioneers of the air, the dreamers, the builders. Honor to all, and victory. Our time's up now. We've been talking about flying fortresses. Vega is one of the companies that builds them. We're proud of that. Next week, we're going to tell you one of the biggest stories of the war. The story of the Air Transport Command. Please listen. Until then, good night, Americans.
This program has come to you from the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations of Burbank, California. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. This radio show comes to you from the builders of Lockheed and Vega Aircraft. Our story tonight concerns three members of the radio public who are at this moment listening to another radio program.
The striking power of a fighting force depends on its supply lines. Air transport has given to this war its quality of extreme mobility and compressed action.
Our three listeners are none of them under 90 years old. They agree on almost nothing, including this radio program.
Air Transport Command planes flew 5 million miles in 5 months on the Australian front alone with the loss of only one plane. Air Transport Command moved a total cargo of 500,000 pounds in a single operation. One crew made 5 South Atlantic crossings in 5 days.
Oh, these radio fellows here today and gone tomorrow.
That was Corporal Homer Fickett just heard from, who, as usual, has grabbed the most comfortable chair in the sheltering arms old soldiers' home.
My air freighters, the flying boxcars.
Flying boxcars. That's dangerous talk.
It comes right down to mud, Bub. You can't beat a Missouri mule.
Solomon Olmsted was a mule skinner in the Civil War and proud of it.
Well, there ought to be a law.
Corporal Fickett, however, is a man of more parts, which he freely admits. He was, among other things, the sulphurous editor from 1871 to 1886 of the Hodgetown Scimitar and Clarion Call. Its slogan...
Fearless, undaunted, imperishable Hodge County Americanism. Forever.
Ephraim Dexter was in the cavalry at Petersburg.
Would have been at San Juan Hill if they'd let me.
Of course, all three wear their decorations. The most original of these is on Dexter's lapel. A pair of silver wings.
Cargo delivered without incident. Cargo. It could have been diamond drills, sulfathiazole, walkie-talkies, 50 caliber cartridges, blood plasma, jeeps, peeps, V-mail, parlays, ration K. It would have been any of these things. It is every day. In this case, the cargo was an American export on reservoirs of goodwill. Wendell L. Wilkie.
Why don't those fellas stay home, mind their own business?
He didn't just up and go. The president sent him.
New measure. I quote from him. I have traveled a total of 31,000 miles, which sounds very far. The net impression of my trip, however, is not one of distances from other peoples, but of closeness to them. Unquote.
What's that about?
American fighting men are finding this out for themselves. Not only the flyers, today's troops move by air.
Yeah, but how many?
The success of last week's smash through in New Guinea, which caught the Japs flat-footed in Buna, was the surprise landing of men, supplies, and even jeeps in the greatest airborne infantry movement in history. Paratroops were flown 1,500 miles non-stop from England to Iran in 8 hours for our invasion of North Africa. The Air Transport Command...
We've heard enough of that.
Oh, hold on.
No, I'd rather wait for facts.
We'll never know what happened till it's all over. We won't know the facts till 20 years after the war.
In that case, you'll never know.
ATC, that's what that fellow was talking about. The Air Transport Command. My grandnephew's in there. Well, you can't get a fighting army any further than they can march. Remember Petersburg? My grandnephew, Richard, he always said...
By the way, how's he doing?
Richard?
That grandnephew of yours. You had any word from him lately?
Well, he's been mighty busy, Richard has. He covers a lot of territory. Last time I heard from him, he had laundry waiting for him in 17 foreign countries. You're the only one in the Holmes had a letter this month,
Yeah,
however.
from the War Department, too. I seen the envelope. Official business. It was marked.
Yeah, that's right.
What's the War Department writing about, Corporal?
In due time, Solly. I'll take that up in due time. Just now, I'd like to hear a little more about Dexter's grandnephew, or great-grandnephew, or great-great-great-grandnephew.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Homer. I never thought you was much interested. He's a pilot, you know, a head pilot.
Yeah, sure, we know.
He sent me these wings.
Yeah.
See these wings?
Yeah, we've seen the wings.
Oh, come to think of it, I never had a close look, Dexter. Mind if I do?
Oh, sure thing, Homer. Here you be. They just regulation pilot's air wings.
Must have stamped a tremendous lot of these things out all at once, Dexter. That's kind of dim for an eagle. What's it made out of?
Silver.
Huh. Some of it's come off on your coat, Dexter. What's AEA stand for? Oh, here it is. Written out on the other side. Air Eagles of America. What's that?
That's from back there before he was in the Air Transport Command. Air Eagles of America. The Flying Tigers, all the same outfit.
Wasn't it your nephew got you started making those toy airplanes?
Model airplanes. I started him. Why, when Richard was only
Yeah, you told us. And, you and him took your first ride in a flying machine.
McHenry County Fair. We was up there for 25 minutes. $1 for every state I saw. 5 states I could see.
Can't seem like much now, Dexter. At least not to that great-grandnephew, with him kiting all over the face of the globe and all that laundry piling.
You know what Richard says? He says that only 18 months back there wasn't any ATC. That's Air Transport Command. There was just nothing at all but a little old cubbyhole back somewhere in Washington with 2 men in it and a stenographer. And now look.
Look at what?
Look at what? Look at the map.
What map?
Well, I'll draw it for you. Here's us and here's them.
Yeah, that's supposed to be Europe.
Here's Asia, and they're flying all over. This way to Alaska, to China and Russia like this. This way to Greenland and Iceland and England. Down off there from Brazil to Egypt and India and Africa and Hawaii. Out this way in Australia and the South Sea Islands. You heard what the radio said. They're going everywhere, carrying everything. Right up in the air, everything.
How do you know?
Well, all the planes we make in this country, 1/5 of them is carrying things. The airplane manufacturers is planning them big enough now to tote 100 tons.
Where'd you get them figures?
Oh, nowhere, Sally. He's just making them up.
I copied them right out of the airplane magazines. Got the figures right here. Them aviation magazines my nephew Richard give me a subscription. They take that hospital burned up in Nome, Alaska.
What about
all
it?
they did was order a new one, and less than 2 days afterwards we got it. Their beds and all less than 2 days by air. And then some boys out in the Pacific Ocean needed some music, and we flew them a whole piano all the way to the South Sea Islands.
Pianos, ukuleles, hot and cold running water, soda fountains on the beach, jitterbugging under the cocoa palms. That's where our taxes go, by jings. Mandolins and soda pop. Fustest with the mostest piano music. La-dee-da.
Easy.
By
Easy
jings,
there,
there's my next letter to the papers. Foreign wars, foreign ways. America's good enough for me. Ought to be good enough for any good American. Hodge County's good enough for any American. Nobody knows who's fighting where. That's what your airplanes done to it.
It started with the automobile.
Jeeps.
All started with the automobile. How about the locomotive? How about the steamboat? How about the horse and buggy? Why don't you write a letter to the horse and the wheel? Get after the fella invented that one. We'd be better off in the trees, wouldn't we, Solly, eating each other? And Corporal Fickett, if you don't think my nephew's a good American, if you think he don't know where he's fighting and who he's fighting and
well,
for
hold
what?
on. Who ain't a good American? Just
Easy,
who? I don't
easy,
like
Solly.
to hear that kind of talk.
About your nephew, Dexter, your grandnephew,
Yes?
I believe you said it was, the airplane pilot and the Flying Tiger with all that laundry.
Well, what about him?
What about him? What about him indeed? What about those silver wings you're wearing? The AEA, isn't it? The American Eagles of the Air.
The Air Eagles of America.
I have a communication from the War Department. And a box top from a well-known breakfast food. Which shall I read first, Dexter?
Oh, well, either one. Either one, as far as I'm concerned.
The communication from Washington. Here's the gist of it, Solly. There is no Richard Dexter. Now, as to the box top. You will recognize the label of a popular health cereal. It bears a printed invitation. I will read it. Quote, boys, 8 to 12, enlist. Be a real live aviator. Win your wings. Here's what you get. The AEA secret code book, your stratosphere helmet, a pilot's logbook, and this handsome pair of official silver wings. Send in this box top and 24 others just like it, and we will enroll you with full privileges. Yours for happy landings in the AEA, the Air Eagles of America. Unquote. Well, Sully, I guess it's bedtime.
First thing I want you to get straight is, I didn't steal them box tops. I paid for them. About these wings. I never said I won them. I said they was his. Richard's. Corporal Fickett says he's found out there isn't any Richard. He's wrong. First off, I just wanted something to boast about, so I saved up for those aviation magazines so it'd sound right. I saved those box tops for one of them log books they send so as I could tell one plane from another, which none of you can. I took that trip back in 28, I really did, at the McHenry County Fair. I saw them 5 states. That's what started it. Just don't tell me there ain't any Richard. He looks like that pilot took me up. That fella's somewhere right now fighting in this war. He's Richard, but he don't know it. So's a lot of others. Colin Kelly, O'Hare, Levine. Thousands of them. The president says there's going to be 1 million. You talk about Petersburg. You're always talking about Petersburg. All right, I was at Petersburg, too, and I'm proud of it. We fought there for the Union, and we won. Abe Lincoln told us no nation could exist half slave and half free. And now we're all free. And when you want to go someplace, you just go, and nobody stops you at the border with a gun when you try to get from one state to another. And your money's good all over. Why, the whole world's just as small as America was back in 1863. Smaller. That's what those big planes are doing. I'm proud of Petersburg, but right now I want to talk about Casablanca. I want to talk about Hangzhou and Libya and Stalingrad and Guadalcanal. No nation can exist half slave and half free. No world can exist half slave and half free. Well, see you in the morning. Night, Homer. Night, Solly.
Well, it's the end of our story. Today, the Air Transport Command of the United States Army flies well-marked military highways of the air. Well-marked, some of them, by pioneers like Kingsford Smith and Post and Hughes and Wilkins and Matten, who flew Lockheeds. We're very proud of that history, proud of that contribution to the safety of today and tomorrow. From the experience of which have come the Lockheed Hudson and Vega Ventura bombers and the P-38 Lightning, the world's fastest fighter. Next week, we're going to do a program about the Navigator, an important man in an airplane. In our show tonight, the cast was all Star and all Mercury. Joseph Cotton was Solomon Olmsted. Ray Collins was Homer Fickett, and Dexter was played by your obedient servant. Please join us next week. Till then, good night, Americans.
This program has come to you from the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations of Burbank, California. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. This radio show is brought to you by the men and women of Lockheed and Vega. Tonight's program is dedicated to the navigating men on the big Navy patrol planes, and the Army bombers, and to the jobs they're doing. Our planes are named after the stars of Lockheed and Vega. Orion, Electra, Lodestar. The Vega, that was Matten's plane, and Post and Gatti's. One Vega set a round-the-world record. It took another Vega to break it. Then Howard Hughes and another Lockheed did better yet, circle the world in 3 days, 19 hours, and 9 minutes. The Lodestar, that was a commercial transport. Today it's re-engineered and armed to the teeth. We call it the Ventura Bomber. Today, the Ventura Bomber, the Hudson Bomber, and the P-38 Lightning are helping to write history among the stars. Gazing up at the stars, earthbound philosophers and poets used to say,
"Behold the enormity, how great it is, not to be measured, not to be conceived of. How small a thing is man."
Astronomers cataloged the stars, and navigators put them to man's use. The navigator tells the ship where to go. He's just as important in the air as on the sea. Not so many years ago, a pilot could only tell where he was going by sticking his head over the side of his plane and looking for landmarks. Then came radio beams, locators, and nowadays dead reckoning and celestial navigation, flying by the stars. Now here's a navigator, name of Carl W. Jones. You haven't read that name in the papers. Not yet. Unless you happen to subscribe to the Hodgetown Daily Scimitar.
An honorable mention went to Carl W. Jones for jackknife and hatchet trailblazing through McGrundy's woods.
That's the last time Carl Jones' name appeared in the press, and that was some time ago. It's been almost 10 years since Carl was active in the Boy Scouts. Mrs. Jones still has the clipping. Mrs. Jones used to get in the papers all the time.
The Ladies Forward League met Wednesday afternoon at the home of Mrs. Walter Jones on 513 North Elm Street. Bridge was played at 3 tables, after which delicious refreshments were served by Mrs. Jones, and the guests left with many an expression of gratitude for a delightful afternoon.
Mrs. Jones doesn't save those clippings.
Of course not. All the girls who belong to clubs or groups get their names in the social notes. There's nothing special about me, except I'm Carl's mother.
Carl has a girlfriend. And her last moment of celebrity was the time she won a prize for Best Eleanor Powell tap dance imitation at the annual A&P Wiener Roast.
All hearts were captured by the cute and skillful dancing of little Lucy Carter.
Oh, gee, I forgot about that.
We have a very extensive research staff, Miss Carter.
Why'd you pick on us?
Because of Carl.
Mrs. Jones, your son is a typical navigator. That's why we picked him. This program isn't dedicated only to Carl.
Why not?
Well, he got the 5th highest rating in his class in training school.
He always got good marks in grammar school. A and neatness, always. At the grocery store, Mr. Nedick said he never had anybody working for him so accurate or careful. Just give Carl a pencil, Mr. Nedick used to say, and watch his dust. Never a mistake. Mr. Nedick said he ought to be a bookkeeper.
Bookkeeper? Mrs. Jones, wouldn't you say that helped him to be a navigator?
I'd say it helped.
Before we go on with the show, Mrs. Jones, have you anything you'd like to say about the war?
No.
Miss Carter?
Mrs. Jones does a lot. She's fingerprint clerk at the school 4 afternoons a week, and she serves on the draft board Monday and Tuesday nights. Millie, that was the hired girl, went to work in the shipyard.
Most women do their own housework, Lucy.
I'm taking lessons in spot welding. Oh, Mrs. Jones goes to classes on first aid, too.
Nutrition and first aid. Wednesday and Friday.
Well, that doesn't leave you much time for your women's clubs, Mrs. Jones.
All the girls are busy now doing things for the war.
Thank you, Mrs. Jones. Thank you, Miss Carter. And now, ladies and gentlemen, about Mrs. Jones' son, Carl. I'll give it to you fast. Carl Jones enlisted in the Air Force. At the grocery store where Carl used to work, they said he'd make a good bookkeeper. Carl can add and subtract like 60, but he wanted to fly. And the truth is, he'll never make a first-rate fighter pilot.
Jones?
Said his commanding officer.
Jones, I'm afraid that's about it.
I want to fly, sir. If I can't fly.
I told you Carl wanted to fly, and besides, there was all that expensive training he'd had. Carl hated to see that going to waste.
Jones?
Yes, sir?
How would you like to be a navigator?
A navigator, sir?
Why all the astonishment?
Well, sir, you've got to know mathematics backwards and forwards to be a navigator. I didn't make headlines in geometry.
Can you add?
Yes, sir.
What Carl really meant was...
And how?
Make many mistakes at it?
No, sir.
Then you can be a navigator. We'd like you to have a try at it, Jones.
So Carl took the pencil from behind his ear, so to speak, got himself a sextant and a Bowditch's Practical Navigator and Weems' treatise on aerial navigation and drawing instruments and precision dividers and several Mercator charts and a stopwatch and a few dozen extra pencils. He worked at it hard for 15 weeks, took his place beside a lot of other boys from the stores and offices and colleges of America, took his place beside a navigator by the name of Christopher Columbus, a trailblazer named of Daniel Boone, who never got lost, no, but he was bewildered once for 3 days, a lot of other pathfinders. Carl learned to stand in the plastic glass turret of a bomber and take some sights on the stars and then make some passes with that yellow pencil of his. And lo, he knew where he was. It was magic. Carl Jones, fresh from wrapping butter and cartoning eggs, could intercept starlight, traveling at 180,000 miles a second. Consult his almanacs, fool with his sliding scale, make a few passes with his yellow wand, and by Jupiter, he knew where he was.
Holy cat, it works.
Floating around in space, 1,000 miles from anywhere. Carl could find out where he was by Jupiter and by Polaris and by Sirius and by Lyra and by about 40 other stars, as well as the sun. He could tell where he was and where he was going and when he'd get there. By the lodestar he could. And all at once, Carl came to an important realization. He found out he wasn't just a clerk in the big bombers he navigated and practiced. He was the manager. He told the pilot where to go. Well, pretty soon, Carl got so good they sent him to an airbase in a jungle island in the South Pacific. It was so small that from 10,000 feet it looked like a sprig of parsley. A nice location for a thriving business, though. Customers weren't long in coming.
Men, our reconnaissance reports a very powerful enemy task force in our vicinity.
The vital information goes up on the blackboard. Pencils come out. Carl Jones takes down his biggest order to date.
Enemy bears 320. True distance. Enemy disposition. 2 aircraft carriers. 4 cruisers. 8 destroyers. Objective. Intercept. And attack.
So this is it. A far cry from the grocery counter to the plyboard desk of a 4-engine bomber loaded with big trouble.
Wind is from 60, 15 knots. Going to make an airspeed of 280. Track of 320, true. Brings us out on the enemy's vector to the airspeed ring.
Thus, Carl, the Jones boy who ground your coffee medium, now prepares to grind the enemy fine.
Speed of 290. Means I'll be coming back, steering 142, making a track of 230 miles.
It comes to 43 minutes anyway, before they intercept the enemy fleet. Then, for 43 minutes, and exactly on schedule, rendezvous. The enemy under the wings. The bombers dodging the ack-ack fire, watching for fighters make their runs. Pieces of flak rip through the cabin walls. Machine gun bullets whine through the ship. A port engine is hit. The enemy fighters swarm around the bomber. Then from the bombardier...
Arms away! Let's beat it out of here!
So they beat it out of there. And with machine gun slugs spanging and humming through the ship, Carl Jones makes some vital corrections for a crippled engine, false course to throw off pursuit ships who might find the secret landing field, The change in wind direction and velocity. Very routine. Very.
Now, let's see. 145 degrees. Making a track of 235 miles.
Unperturbed, the yellow pencil moves across the board. The grocer's clerk makes his calculations. In other bombers, clerks and college boys and coal miners hand up slips of paper to the pilots with estimated times of arrival calculated correctly, almost to the second. Theme song for pilots. Show me the way to go home. Nightfall. The bomber has shaken its pursuers. Her course has changed. More calculations for the navigator. Look at him. Less than 6 feet tall, with his head among the stars. Stands there with the sextant to his eyes and puts the universe to use. Puts the giants of heaven to work for him. Outside his plastic turret gleam stars, bigger through the middle than our entire solar system. They work for him. Carl Jones, whom you used to know, peers at them and steers by them, homing. For he wears the universe like a wristwatch, balances it like a pencil, orders and uses it like a navigator. Estimated time of arrival at base 23.27.
There she is, boys. We're home.
Something went wrong. I don't know how it could have happened. My estimated time of arrival was off. 12 seconds.
Ex-grocer's clerk takes 4-engine bomber out to sea, engages enemy, attacked by enemy fighters, hit by flak, engine knocked out, change of course necessitated, wind changes, brings 4-engine bomber home again to a 1-cent postage stamp somewhere in the South Pacific. Wonders where he dropped 12 seconds. Earthbound philosophers and poets, gazing up at the stars, used to say,
"Behold the enormity, how great it is, not to be measured, not to be conceived of. How small a thing is man."
Americans, this is 1942. Look up. What do you see? Enormity. The glittering cosmos. And Carl Jones. He's up there in the middle of it.
He's doing a great job.
That's what the Air Forces say.
I always knew he would.
How about you, Miss Carter? You're going to marry him.
I think he's wonderful.
Surprised?
I shouldn't be. He hasn't changed any. I guess he was wonderful before. We're just finding it out.
Miss Carter, I don't want to embarrass you, but you're wonderful, too. Carl up there in the stars thinks you're wonderful. And you, Mrs. Jones? I dare anybody to make a joke about an American Woman's Club now. While we're about it, is there anybody who thinks it's funny or dull to be a bookkeeper? Your boy Carl may never make the headlines, Mrs. Jones, but he's proving an important point. It concerns the dignity of man. He doesn't look very small up there compared to the universe. He looks very big. That's all for tonight. Please listen next week. Till then, good night, Americans.
This program has come to you from the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations of Burbank, California. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Hello, Americans. This program is brought to you by the men and women of Lockheed and Vega. I was standing out in final assembly on B-38 Lightnings over at one of the plants Saturday talking to some mechanics, and the public address system was switched on. This is what we heard.
Attention. The following news is just coming over the press wires. In a sweep over North Africa, Lockheed P-38 Lightnings brought down 40 Axis planes. All our planes returned safely to their bases.
For a minute, the Lockheed plant sounded like New Year's Eve, and then everybody went back to work. Good news like that about our fighting planes means a lot to all of us. The P-38 Lightning is something to cheer about. So is the Ventura bomber we make at Vega and the four-engined B-17F. Those planes are writing history in the sky. Behind them is more than history. A tradition of nerve and know-how, of courage and patience and imagination. Behind them, behind all great planes, is the story of aviation. This broadcast, Ceiling Unlimited, is dedicated to one of aviation's pioneers who's fighting in North Africa tonight. In the old days, he flew the mail there, opened the route between Toulouse and Casablanca. Guillaume, old friend, of you I shall say a few words. That time you were lost over the Grand Atlas. We learned you'd been gone a week. It was winter. I'd come up from farthest to Misamis to join Daly at Casablanca. For 5 days, the two of us, each in his plane, had ransacked the mountains. 2 ships. It seemed to us that 100 squadrons navigating for 100 years would not have been enough to explore that North African range. We'd lost all hope. The very Berbers themselves, bandits who'd commit a crime for 5 francs, refused to form a rescue party out of fear of those mountains.
We should surely die. The forbidden Atlas never give up a man in winter.
And when a second time I slipped between the towering walls and giant pillars of the Atlas, it seemed to me I was no longer seeking, but was now sitting up with your body in the silence of a cathedral of snow. You'd been gone a week, I say. And I was lunching between flights in a restaurant in Marrakesh when a man stuck his head in the door and called out,
They found Guillaume.
All the strangers in the restaurant embraced. I remember we found you, we cried like fools. Put our arms about a living Guillaume. Resuscitated. The author of his own miracle. And it was at that moment that you pronounced your first intelligible sentence.
I swear that what I went through, no animal would have gone through.
Frozen memories. It was hard for you to thaw them out. But there in that hotel room in Marrakesh, slowly, word by word, moment by moment, you told us the story. A storm that bottled up all space and sent every other male pilot back to his starting point. But you'd taken off in the hope of finding a rift in the sky. You found this rift, this trap, a little to the south.
15,000.
Now about 15,000 feet, the ceiling being a couple of thousand feet below you and pierced only by the highest peaks. You set your course for Dakar.
Down currents.
Down currents. The engines run on, but the ship seems to be sinking. You jockey to hold your altitude. The ship loses speed and goes mushy, and still you sink.
The
whole sky seems to be coming down on you. You can't land anywhere, and you try in vain to turn around and fly back into those zones where the air is dense and solid as a pillar has held you up. That pillar has melted away. Everything here is rotten, and you slither about in a sort of universal decomposition while the cloud bank rises apathetically, reaches your level, and swallows you up. It almost had me in a corner once, you explained.
Almost had me in a corner once. As soon as I felt I was caught, I dropped the controls, and I grabbed my seat for fear of being flung out of the ship. The wind rolled me over and over like a hat in a road from 18,000 feet down to 10. Then I caught a glimpse of a dark horizontal blot that helped me right the ship. It was a lake. Flew around that lake almost 2 hours till I ran out of fuel, and I set the ship down in the snow. She went over on her nose. When I dragged myself clear of her, I stood up, and the wind knocked me down. I stood up again, went over a second time. So I crawled into the cockpit and dug me out a shelter in the snow. Remember, I pulled a lot of mail sacks around me, and I lay there for 2 days and 2 nights. The storm blew over, and I started to walk my way out. I walked for 5 days and 4 nights. And you know what amazed me?
Drink, old fellow. Drink.
Oh, I must tell you this. After 2 or 3 or 4 days of tramping, all you think about is sleep. I would long for it, then I'd say to myself, if my wife still believes I'm alive, she must believe that I'm on my feet. The boys all think that I'm on my feet. As early as the second day, you know, the hardest job I had was to force myself not to think. The pain was too much, and I was really up against it too hard. I had to forget that, or I shouldn't have had the heart to go on walking, but I didn't seem to be able to control my mind. It kept working like a turbine. Still, I could more or less choose what I was to think about. I tried to stick to some films I had seen, a book that I'd read, but the film and the book would go through my mind like lightning. I'd be back where I was in the snow, and it never failed. So I would think about other things. I had to stop every 2 or 3 hours to cut my shoes open a bit more and massage my feet that were swollen. Maybe my heart would be going too fast. I was beginning to lose my memory. Every time I stopped, I forgot something. The first time, it was a glove, and it was cold. I had to put it down in front of me, and I'd forgotten to pick it up. Next time, it was my watch, and my knife, then my compass. And each time I stopped, I stripped myself of something that I needed. I was becoming my own enemy. I can't tell you how it hurt me when I found that out. I was crawling along the side of a sheer wall, hanging over space, digging, kicking out pockets in the ice so that I could hold on. All of a sudden, my heart conked, hesitated, started up again, beat crazily, and I said to myself, if it hesitates a moment too long, I drop. I stayed still and listened to myself. And I think that never in my life have I listened as carefully to a motor as I listened to my heart, me hanging there. I said to it, come on, old boy, go to work. Try beating a little. That's good stuff my heart is made of. It hesitated, but it went on. You don't know how proud I was of that heart.
There was one time, however, when you slipped and finding yourself stretched flat on your face in the snow, you threw in your hand. You were like a boxer emptied of all passion by a single blow, lying and listening to the seconds drop one by one into a distant universe until the 10th second fell. There was no appeal. All that you had to do in the world to find peace was to shut your eyes. So little was needed to blot out that world of crags and ice and snow. Let drop those miraculous eyelids, and there was an end of blows, of stumbling falls, of torn muscles and burning ice, of that burden of life you were dragging along like a worn-out ox, a weight heavier than any wain or cart. And your body, that beast now gorged with suffering, lay ready to participate in the indifference of marble. Your very scruples subsided. Guillemets, you miser. You'd made up your mind to deny us your return, to take your pleasure selfishly without us, among your white angels in the snows. And then remorse floated up from the depths of your consciousness.
I thought of my wife. She wouldn't have any money if she couldn't collect the insurance.
When a man vanishes in France, his legal death is postponed for 4 years. This awful detail was enough to blot out the other visions. You were lying face downward on a bed of snow that covered a steep mountain slope. With the coming of summer, your body would be washed with this slush down into one of the 1,000 crevasses of the Atlas. You knew that. But you also knew that some 50 yards away, a rock was jutting up out of the snow.
I thought if I get up, I may be able to reach it. If I can prop myself against the rock, they'll find me there next summer.
Once you were on your feet again, you tramped 2 nights and 3 days.
What saves a man is to take a step, and another step. It's always the same step, but you have to take it.
I swear that what I went through, no animal would have gone through. That sentence, the noblest ever spoken, defines man's place in the universe. There's a tendency to class such men as you with bullfighters and gamblers. People extol your contempt for death. No, Guillaume, I would not give a fig for anybody's contempt for death if its roots are not sunk deep in an acceptance of responsibility. I once knew a young suicide. I can't remember what disappointment in love it was which induced him to send a bullet carefully into his heart. But I remember having felt, on learning of this sorry show, an impression not of nobility, but of lack of dignity. So, behind that attractive face, beneath that skull which should have been a treasure chest, there had been nothing. Nothing at all. And when I heard of this meager destiny, I remembered the death of a man. He was a gardener. He was speaking on his deathbed.
You know, I used to sweat sometimes when I was digging. My rheumatism would pull at my leg, and I would damn myself for a slave. And now, do you know, I'd like to spade and spade. It's beautiful work. A man is free when he's using a spade. Besides, who's going to prune my trees when I'm gone?
That man was bound by ties of love to all cultivable land and to all the trees of the earth. Like you, old friend, he battled against death in the name of his creation. He was a man of courage, of responsibility. You knew that you were responsible for yourself, for the males, for your family, for the fulfillment of the hopes of your comrades, for aviation itself. You held in your hands their sorrow and their joy. You were responsible for that new element which the living were constructing and in which you were a participant. To be a man is precisely to be responsible. It is to feel shame at the sight of what seems to be unmerited misery. It is to take pride in a victory won by one's comrades. It is to feel, when setting one stone, that one is contributing to the building of the world. Of such stuff are the pioneers of aviation made. Our broadcast tonight was based on one of the great classics of aviation, Wind, Sand, and Stars by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. It was our very great privilege to have with us in the role of Guillaume, Lieutenant Burgess Meredith of the Flying Training Command. Good night, Americans.
This program was presented by the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations of Burbank, California. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. This radio show is brought to you by the men and women of Lockheed and Vega. Stand by.
Hallo. Deutsche Rundfunkgesellschaft. Hallo, Hauptstation in Berlin. Ich bedauere, aber ich darf nicht mehr Deutsch sprechen. Operator 23. This is Operator 23. Won't speak German now. He can speak here.
From the United States, Burbank, California State. Hello. This is Operative 23. I hope you're hearing this. This is Secret Agent 23. inside an American war plant. One of America's greatest aircraft manufacturers. The Vega plant. Vega. M as a worker disguised. This secret broadcast is made through concealed microphone worn on lapel, cleverly concealed behind Vega workers' identification badge. On my coat is a microphone into which I'm speaking. Through this, I shall my mission carry out to inform you from their source, facts and data of American production of aircraft. Sieg Heil! A German soldier salutes his respected superiors. Secret Agent 23, making secret broadcasts from American war plant.
Jackson, that cat's groovy as a 2-cent movie.
Solid, Kurt. Solid.
He digs that melojive that sends me.
You can say that again. When his boots are laced, he really jumps.
Beat me, Daddy. Tell me more.
Hallo, Hauptstation. Deutsche Rundfunkgesellschaft. Operative 23, making secret broadcast. The voices just heard were those of American slaves. Translation impossible. Obviously code information to be kept secret from guards or foremen, as here they are called. Will obtain precise German form for groovy as a 2-cent movie. Also, he that mellow jive digs, murder, etc. Hello, Berlin.
I'm in through. What's your speech?
This code language before heard clear indications that morale is low. At any moment now, democracy will break down. How otherwise? Men and women without regard for racial purity sit together here, working unguarded. From where should necessary obedience come when discipline is here so missing that slave just passing me purposelessly to himself as he works, whistles and sings? Blueprints, Captain Officer. Keep contact, please.
Yes, who is it?
John Smith, employee. I've been sent for the blueprints,
Come
please.
in. Hello.
Excuse, please, I'm in the wrong place.
You certainly are, Fritz. You should have stood in Berlin. I'd like you to meet some friends of mine.
How do you do?
FBI, Mr. Schmidt.
And FBI. Excuse, please, what is cooking?
We're going to have to take you along with us.
Hallo, Hauptstation, Deutsche Rundfunkgesellschaft. Hallo, Max. Hallo, Hermann. Hallo, Lieutenant Obermeier. Somebody. Is it for
Sorry,
real?
Fritz. We'll take over now. I'll relieve you of that microphone.
Is here a mistake?
Come on,
please?
Fritz.
Hello, Hauptstation. Hello, Berlin. Hello, Tokyo. Hello, Axis. Your secret operative 23 didn't know it, but his secret broadcast had a coast-to-coast hookup. CBS, to be exact, on the Lockheed and Vega program. Don't worry. There are no spies at Lockheed or Vega. We see to that. For your information, was all arranged. We thought our listeners might be amused. Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. If you don't mind, we're going to stay right on Fritz's private beam to Berlin. Fritz came here to the Vega plant looking for secrets. His boss wants to find out about American planes. What's in them? What's the secret of their success? Axis listeners, come with me. We'll continue Drei und Schwanzig's tour of the Vega assembly line. You want secrets? Let's ask some American workers. What was it Fritz called them? Slaves. Maybe they'll tell us how it's done, what it's done with, and why. Here we are at a drill press. Here's a typical American slave. Let's see what she has to say about it. Hello there. Maybe you can tell us why you work here.
Doing what I can to win the war. Naturally, we all are. The way I figure it, the more of us we can get to work, the more planes we can get.
Oh, let's hear from this lady over here. She seems to be pounding rivets into something or other. I don't know if she can hear us or not with all this racket. Better listen with both ears. Pardon me. I beg your pardon. I don't want to slow up production, but just what is it you're putting into this plane?
I'm paying back.
A little closer to the microphone, please. That's better.
I'm paying back in rivets. Double for every bullet they put into my Joe.
Your husband was killed in combat?
He wasn't my husband, but he was going to be.
I see.
Yeah, and I can match their machine guns any time with this hammer.
Nazis, listen to this. We're in the plastics department now. You know something about plastics. You helped develop them. You also developed an ally in Italy, plastics and Italians. Watch what we do with them in America. Mr. Crano, I have just a minute of your time, please.
Only a minute, Mr.
This is
Wells.
Mr. Vincenti Crano. About your work, Mr. Crano, an Italian working in an American aircraft factory, making bombers to destroy the Axis. Something worth talking about. Will you tell our listeners what you did in Italy before you came here?
I was a sculptor.
Now you're using that talent to make molds for castings.
Well, it's not quite the same, but in a way it is.
Do you have a family, Mr. Crano?
Oh, yes, 8 children. 4 of my boys are fighting for Uncle Sam.
Fighting against Italy, Mr. Crano?
Oh, not against Italy. They are fighting for the freedom of Italy. When we win, Italy will be free again.
So you're satisfied making molds?
Oh, I'm very happy with my work. Yes, I feel I'm really accomplishing something. I'm proud to be part of all this.
Mr. Crano, is there any secret to the way you're making molds? What do you add that makes your castings better than those produced by the Axis?
As you say, Mr. Wells, that's a secret.
I see. You like your work, though?
Oh, yes, I like my work very much.
Thank you. Hello, Fascists. Are you still listening? You learning what goes into our American planes? There's a very busy young lady over here. You might like to hear from her. She seems to be somebody. We get through here, please.
Sure.
Pardon, watch the mic
All
cable.
right.
That's it. We'll get in here as close as we can.
This goes to A23 production. This one goes over to engine
I say
assembly.
to have you a minute, please.
Hold it, buddy. Just a second, please. Joe, rush these half-inch couplings to engine
Okay.
assembly. Hurry it up.
This is a broadcast.
Buddy, I'm awfully busy. This shipment of 1170s goes to maintenance. They came in 20 minutes ago.
Okay, I'll rush it.
All right, what's on your mind? No, those panels have to go to sandblast.
I wish you'd tell us what you put into your planes.
I'm an expediter, mister. I put the right parts in the right places at the right time. Say,
see.
look, if Meyer doesn't get those gaskets, he'll have kittens, and Vago will have no exhaust manifolds.
Don't mind me.
I don't. These go to 207. Step on it. Shoot these over to the lab for stress test.
Oh, over here's the right wing assembly. I know, Berlin, you want secrets. You want the device or the design that makes our wings more durable than yours. You've noticed ours don't drop off in a 500-mile-an-hour dive. Maybe it's something we put inside those wings. Take the microphone up this ladder and get a look at what goes on inside. Stand by. Now then, on top of a 10-foot ladder, you see down inside the long tunnel, rather flat, egg-shaped tunnel, to the inside of the right wing. Outside, along its smooth, streamlined surface, a lot of young women are diligently inserting rivets, inspecting seams, and rapidly molding the great structure. Inside, it's dark, cramped, maybe the secret's inside here. I think I see a workman down there, crouched down there in the narrow space. Try and find out what he's doing. Hello in there. Can we speak to you a minute?
Okay.
From the size of the voice and the size of the quarters, I think you're about to hear from one of the many midgets, one of the many little people employed in our American aircraft factories.
Here we are.
Could you tell us what goes into the making of a wing like this one, besides metals and craftsmanship?
You mean designs and all like
What
that?
I mean is the spirit of the thing. For instance, how do you like working all cooped up in that very cramped space in there?
How do I like it? It's the greatest thing that ever happened.
In what way?
Well, heck, before, we little people had nothing to do but be funny in circuses and things like that. But now comes along a job that nobody else can do but us.
A larger man couldn't get inside one of those wings, could he?
They tried it. Why, it's even tough for me. But I'm not squawking. I like it.
Good for you. I'll let you get back to work. Goodbye now. We're on our way up to the main control panel assembly, and here they attach fine wires to delicate instruments. The eyes and ears of the plane. This young lady, for instance. She'll stop those nimble fingers of hers for just a minute. Maybe she'll answer a question or two. Excuse me, miss.
Yes?
Would you be so kind as to tell our listeners what it is you do?
I connect wires onto the terminals of bomber control panels.
How do you know which wire goes into which terminal?
By the length and the size.
Of each wire?
Yes.
How'd you have to get into your line of work?
I wrote out the regular application.
Now, what was your real reason for wanting to work?
Reason? Well, I guess I just wanted to prove something.
Prove what?
Well, I guess just prove that I can wire terminals as well as other people.
You're blind, aren't you?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And I'm not afraid anymore either.
Over here we have a white-haired grandmother who used to teach school. Hello, Mrs. Hill.
Hello.
Mrs. Hill is assembling ventilator panels.
See this? It's going to Alaska.
This is the way it works. You pull a lever, and these louvers will close and keep the cold air away from our boys flying up there.
We've been hearing from a lot of women here at Vega. Over 75% of the new employees here are women. Teresa Turner is very proud of her toolkit. Teresa used to be a hairdresser. Now she operates a drill press. And Priscilla Ori, her husband and father, were both taken prisoners in Bataan. Priscilla works a spot welding machine. The machine is never silent. An ex-sportswoman works beside her. She has a villa in Tahiti. Sends her paychecks to the Red Cross. Over in engineering, you'll find Marion Chuyang Lo. Pale Chinese silks. Marion does blueprints for machine gun mounts. Right here in front of me, two sisters whose parents were born in Norway are sorting and distributing electric wires. Next to them is a Negro with gray hair, a girl with an Irish brogue, born in County Mayo. A woman next to her is Greek. All the races in the world are here. You wouldn't like that, Germany. All the races and every sort of person, they all work together, insist on working. Deaf people, they found a job here they can do. And people who can't speak, blind people, people with money who don't have to work at all. People. We're outside now. Our address, the Vega Aircraft Plant, Burbank, California, United States of America, United Nations of the world. Axis listeners, are you listening? We're broadcasting from the giant runway that sends our planes to you. Can you hear them? Wait a minute, we'll move the mic a little closer. Listen, fascists, if you aren't, you're hearing another plane just like this plane right now. Many planes just like this one right now. In a week or less, you'll meet this one in person. Some of you will, somewhere on your side of the world. The shady side, where you're still holding out against the future. Want secrets? Secrets? Here's the real one. You'd never guess it in a million years. Make it 2 million. Listen. Something in there, all right, isn't there? Well, I'll tell you what. It's people. That's the answer. People. Free people. You can hear the difference. That's Joe and Fred. That's Hetty and Peggy and Jose, Olga and Mary Jane. Ivan and Giovanni, Abby and Patty. Shorty, Chubby and Slim, Lefty and Blondie and Billy the Mid. They're all in that motor. Hear them? Their laughter is in that plane. Their free laughter. Their fine, clean anger. Their dream of the future. Fascists, little people are the big secret. Beautiful, wonderful, plain, ordinary people. They're the secret of victory. The men and women of democracy.
You have just heard Orson Welles in a program presented by the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations of Burbank, California. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
You know, I think some of us are rather glad that those days before Christmas are over. It was pretty hectic, wasn't it? Well, then you can sympathize with Amos and Andy. For them, Christmas is still coming. So let's just see how they're standing up under the strain.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. The men and women of Lockheed and Vega bring you this radio show with their good wishes for your Christmas. Tonight, we've taken our microphone to an important meeting of military chiefs somewhere in the United Nations.
Robert speaking. Yes, sir. No, sir.
General Roberts.
Hold it, I'm talking to him now. What am I going to say to him? Yes, sir. Just as soon as we know, sir.
General Roberts, here are some new reports, sir.
Chungking.
Here's one from the Kremlin.
Look at this one. Typical. A flyer who's had over 8,000 hours. Just as I was preparing to land, he says, a large purple one of the big-bellied type suddenly sucked the air right out from under my plane.
One of the purple variety.
That's what he says. One of the big-bellied kind.
Oh, they're beastly.
Will someone tell me where those creatures come from?
Their name derives from the Old English transitive verb, gremmy, meaning to vex, I believe.
Gremmy. To vex, huh? Well, if we don't get something definite, old Courtney will...
Old Courtney will what? Yes. What is it old Courtney will do?
I'm sorry, General Courtney.
You mean about calling me old? Well, I am old. I've never felt older. 600 miles of the vilest weather I've ever flown in. And literally hundreds of them, gentlemen. Hundreds swarming all over the place.
Won't you please take this chair, General?
No, I will not. 3 of the sharp-nosed ones aboard, gentlemen, and, well, no less than 20 of the hairy-leggedy ones.
Dad, you don't mean the ones with the triangular holes in their stomachs.
What's their particular function?
The holes for the wind to whistle through. Of course, it makes the young pilots think they're going faster than they are.
Villainous. There was one who blew a flute in me ear, like this. Beep, 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 beep. Yeah, he played it. He did it again.
Huh?
There.
Hiding in your scarf, sir.
Look, there it goes.
Someone swat it. Swat it. Bash the little blighter.
Oh, no, sir, don't hit it. It's a Fifinella.
Blast the Fifinella.
They're the females, sir.
Sorry. Bunged right through the window pane by thunder.
Plug that window, orderly. We are violating the blackout.
General Roberts. Oh, has that wireless telephone come in again?
Yes, it has. Shortly before you arrived.
What'd you tell him?
There wasn't anything I could say.
No, I suppose not. Nothing we can say. The official report come in yet?
I'll read it to you. Once upon a time, many, many long years ago, when this old earth of ours was just beginning to stir in its sleep.
Great day in the morning.
Among the reeds and rushes, there lived the goblins and the gnomes and the elves and all the other little people of the fairy race.
What?
It's a report, Courtney.
Go on.
One little clan was different from all the rest.
Different? Oh, my great aunt.
Thousands and thousands and thousands of years, this little tribe lived in a lovely green wood.
Oh, my grandmother's hat. Boil it down, somebody.
Well, Courtney, it seems that these little...
gremlins, they were getting along very well, minding their own business until we came along and dug up their woods to make an airfield.
The general idea is that the gremlins are out to get even. Now, this young lieutenant...
What young lieutenant?
An American named Messler, one of my boys, has quite an idea. I ordered him to report here.
Where is he?
Lieutenant Messler reporting. General Roberts, sir.
Messler, you're an authority on gremlins and the Fifinellas and the Widgets.
I've met them all, sir.
Oh, Messler. Ever come on a Spanduli?
Oh, yes, sir, once. Picked up 6 of them over Norway. They smeared ice on the wings, had little mops and pails.
Ever run into a straight-tail gremlin?
Oh, they're hideous. They're blue in color.
Blue. Bilious blue.
With blue tinge fur.
They snap rubber bands in the pilot's ears to make them pop.
Carry a pocket full of soda straws, they do, and blow bubbles in the oil line.
It's only a week ago, sir. It's only a week ago. Well, I was coming in for a night landing with only one flare at the end of the runway and a whole crowd of spade-nosed gremlins, you know, the kind that dig holes in the landing fields, rushed out, picked up the runway, and lifted it a good 8 feet off the ground.
Don't doubt it.
And just as my wheels were going to touch the ground, they all caught sight of a young female.
Fifinella.
She was behaving just like Margie Hart.
I know just what those gremlins did.
You're right, sir. They dropped the runway and ran after her.
There you are. Well, Lieutenant, you were brought here, I gather, because you have some sort of constructive suggestion.
I'm coming to that, sir. However, I would first like to acknowledge my indebtedness to a young lady whose womanly intuition finally enabled me to win through. I'm referring to Miss Moira O'Dooligan. And as long as this is a confidential report, I can state quite frankly that I was hoping shortly to make her my wife.
Congratulations.
It was while I was paying her a visit that I first received my new slant on the situation.
Slant, eh?
If you will permit me, sir, I will tell you about it.
Hello, Ducky. Come into the house, me heart. Are you on leave?
Only today. Give me a kiss, please. I've had a touch of nerves.
Nerves. And you the calmest of men.
Moira, they're getting me down.
Is it the gremlins, you mean, dear?
Hopping around the way they do in their suction boots. It's very unpleasant.
Suction boots?
A new wrinkle of theirs. So the wind won't knock them down.
Ah, the clever ones.
Last night, they climbed into the gas tank and sucked up half the gas. A couple went swimming in the oil lines, and one of them got stuck. He's the worst. He's taken a personal dislike to me.
Ah, no, me darling. The little ones are never personal.
This one is. Clarence. Clarence, his name is. Clarence Gremlin. He carries a hammer as big as himself. I power dive, and he clunks me on top of the head with it, or he runs out on my wrist and bangs me across the knuckles.
Poor treasure.
One after another. Bangs them like he was playing a xylophone. And he whispers in my ears. When it's soupy and thick, he whispers at me. You're flying upside down, he whispers. Well, then just when I'm relaxing, he suddenly shouts, there's a Jerry on your tail. I start to do a wing over and get away, and then he laughs. And that horrible, high-pitched, squeaky little awful giggle, and reaches up, he does, and yanks a hair out of my head.
Aww.
That's his way of keeping tally. Look at me. I'm almost bald.
Just like Muley, dear. Her tail, I mean.
I beg your pardon?
Muley is our cow at home in Ireland.
Very interesting. And do you think there's some resemblance?
It was Muley had the same identical trouble, me heart. They pulled all the hair out of her tail.
They?
The people of the she. Your little one, my dear. Your sheog. Is he fat or thin?
Homely. Thin, too. All the gremlins are thin. Legs like twigs.
Ah, the poor, wretched, hungry little creatures. It's starving they are.
Starving? With all that good ethyl and oil and glycol they've been lapping up.
Ah, my heart, what they want is a bowl of cream.
Cream?
Faith, every child knows it. Pixies have ever been wild and mischievous. In the old times, they were after coming into the home itself and scaring the cat and sitting up the lamp chimney and tripping the cook. But sure, they only made trouble in houses where the folk were too mean entirely to be setting a bowl of cream out for them each evening by the back doorstep. Light of my life, feed your gremlins their cream and they'll work for you. Do you mind me now?
Cream? Yes. I read that years ago.
So you did, my heart. Get along without your cream now, and you may save the hairs on your head and the wear and tear in your nerves. And now you can be giving me a kiss if you will.
And that, sirs, is how I got on to it.
Cream.
Cream?
Sirs, cream is the answer.
Well,
if I may continue... Well, I left Miss O'Dooligan's residence, and that very night I remembered to fly with a half-pint bottle of the very best heavy cream in my pocket. The visibility was excellent. I was up about 25,000 feet when Clarence appeared. He was outside this time on one of the wingtips. He had his little hammer. I could see him darting back and forth in the moonlight, hammering and testing here and there. I tried to catch his eye. I waved to him. He just went on hammering. And to make matters worse, who should show up behind me but 3 Messerschmitts and a Focke-Wulf 190. The Focke-Wulf let go. The hammering continued. It was Clarence, inside now, tapping away busily at the dials. I made a grab for him, but he got away behind the transmitter. I didn't have anything to throw at him but that bottle of cream. I threw it, all right. Smashed just over his head and broke. All the mess of cream flew out all over him, dousing him from head to foot. Sirs, he was the wettest, maddest gremlin you ever saw. The Jerrys were still after me, and I was so busy for the next 10 minutes I didn't have time to think of Clarence at all. Suddenly, I got the queerest feeling in the pit of my stomach, sirs. The hammering was different. It went something like this. I saw him now close by me in the light of the moon. He looked dreamy and smacked his lips. Like the cream, Clarence? There's more where that came from, but you've got to behave. Okay? If you really want to help, take a look at these Messerschmitts behind us. Know anything about German engines? You do? Then sick 'em. And that, sirs, is my report.
Interesting.
Frankly, it's the explanation of how I managed to account for 3 enemy aircraft.
Cream.
Yes, sir? Cream, sirs.
But it's very hard to come by.
Hard to come by. Gentlemen, we'll skim.
Every pail in the United Nations if necessary.
Gentlemen, the gremlins will get their cream.
Uh-oh. Headquarters? Oh, yes, sir.
It's him. He.
You take it, Courtney.
You want to? Well, you say so, Roberts. Seniority, I suppose. Hello? Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir, but I was inadvertently detained. Yes, sir. Oh, sir, flying conditions are excellent over the entire period, sir, over the entire area. Yes, sir. You've no need to fear our anti-aircraft. And, sir, I think we've got the gremlin problem licked. You do it with cream, and then they won't bother you. In fact, they'll help you. Cream, yes. Just put it anywhere they can get at it. I should say smear some on the reindeers, on the tips of the horns and the hooves, the antlers particularly, and on the runners of the sleigh. Thank you, sir. Good night, and Merry Christmas! Ladies and gentlemen, only once every couple of centuries, a new legend appears on the face of the earth. That there are gremlins in this war is a tribute to the imperishable lightheartedness of the heroes whom they are harrying. It's our happy Christmas thought for this year that as long as pilots of the Allied nations are capable of gremlins, nothing, gremlins included, can ever get them down. In our cast tonight, an old Mercury friend, an old Mercury star, Joseph Cotton, enacted the role of Lieutenant Messler. Agnes Moorehead's part in the festivities consisted of some Irish brogue. Lou Merrill was General Roberts, and General Courtney was your obedient servant. Anthony Collins wrote the music, Lud Gluskin conducted it. And all of us wish all of you all the good things there are to wish for this Christmas. Good night, Americans.
This program has come to you from the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations of Burbank, California. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. This radio show is brought to you by the men and women of Lockheed and Vega. Tonight we're going to talk about voyages. What's the definition of a voyage? Voyages are made by man in 2 dimensions, space and time. On November 28, 1520, Magellan brought his high ships into the Pacific from the Atlantic side. On April 7, 1521, he anchored at Cebu in the Philippines. A voyage of 8,000 miles in 128 days. What we say a voyage was? Man's passage through space and time. All right, then. Here's another voyage. 8,000 miles in 7 days. Out in San Francisco Bay, the China Clipper idles her engines. It's Friday, November 22nd, 1935. The president of the line talks to Ed Music.
You have your sailing orders, Captain. Cast off and depart from Manila in accordance therewith.
Well, this is it. Practice flights, flying blind, landing blind. Now the real thing. Important item concerning China Clipper's flight from San Francisco to Manila. It got there. Stirring message radioed back by Captain Music when big news syndicate radioed for interesting episodes during trip.
Sunset, 6:39.
Dramatic remarks of Captain Ed Music on landing exactly on schedule at Manila.
No incident.
Sunset 6:39. Trip without incident. Years of work made those speeches that short. A room full of dreamers in 1927, the first 90 miles. In 1941, the Clippers flew as many people as live in the city of Houston, Texas. It's a lot of people in the sky. Voyages? Pacific Clipper on its regular run, rather smugly on schedule. It's December 7th our time, December 6th their time. The wireless starts to chatter. Radio officer John Poindexter hands the message to Captain Ford. They look at each other. Message is 2 words. Plan A.
Pacific Clipper to Pan American Terminal, Auckland, and proceeding according to Plan A just received. Japs between us en route back to Hawaii. We'll have to make a return trip the long way around.
The long way around, I'll say. Around the world. Voyages? Over the Timor Sea, across the Dutch East Indies, Java, Sumatra, the Bay of Bengal, India, the Arabian Sea, the Persian Gulf, the Congo, the Atlantic Ocean. A single hop to the northern shoulder of Brazil, and on the bitter cold morning of January 6th, 1942, the glass wall control room at LaGuardia Field, New York.
Pacific Clipper inbound from Auckland, New Zealand. Captain Ford reporting. Due arrive Pan American Marine Terminal, 7 minutes.
And 7 minutes later, 14 men stepped from the plane into the bitter dawn wearing summer clothes, tropical shorts. Never mind what they were wearing. The space and time? Yes, sir, 31,500 miles in 34 days. All the way around the globe to avoid the enemy. Never mind asking if those men dressed in Singapore shorts didn't feel a little silly as they sat shivering in a New York taxi. Never mind asking about the radio officer Poindexter. Told his wife to hold dinner for him in San Francisco on the night of December 2nd. A dinner that waited cold on the table for 31,500 miles. 34 days. Never mind, because we're talking about voyages in their simplest terms. Man's passage through space and time. What is space, anyway? Is a mile in a 4-engine plane with a 50-mile wind on its tail the same mile that Magellan's cutwater rippled through and his slow lugger? Even those Bibles of space, maps, can be liars. When Pan American sent out an expedition to set up a base at Midway, they took along the official survey map. In the 13 years since the map was made, the island had grown, added 1,200 feet to itself. No, the word space is out if it's an accurate scientific definition you're after. And what about time? Time's all right in its place, I guess. You don't let it go out of bounds, that is, but keep it down to nice, homey proportions. It's very handy to navigators and watch merchants and railroad engineers and senators who get themselves into a frenzy over something called time and a half. Nothing's the matter with time. It's all right. Even if you do have to overlook such a clumsy convention as that place on the vacant side of the world, the date line in the Pacific, where Tuesday is Thursday or Thursday Tuesday, depending on which way you're headed, and Wednesday something you just don't talk about. But look through a 10-inch telescope at the nebula in Andromeda. A great watch spring, suddenly released and expanding, even exploding. A still picture of a universe exploding. And if you look at it for 300 years, you'll still see no movement. But it will still be exploding. Someone else's idea of an explosion. Someone else's time. And the creeping beetle's time, measuring his day not by one revolution of the earth, but by 1 inch of change in a reaching shadow of grass. So time is a gray-haired man in the back room of a railroad station with sleeves rolled up, midnight supper in his desk, the green eye shade in his eyes. For time is a static giant, unwinding universes with his slow hand. For time is the thin, quick pulse of a beetle. So there's our definition of a voyage shot to pieces. No space, no time that we can count on.
Excuse it, please, Mr. Wells, but I know what you left out of that definition. Men. Guys like us.
And who are you?
Nobody much. But take that voyage you talked about, the China Clipper's first trip across the Pacific. 8,000 miles in 7 days.
Were you along?
No, but there wouldn't have been any voyage if us guys hadn't made bases for the Clipper on Midway and Wake.
What was your job?
Crane operator. We didn't have any harbors where we were going, but we dumped 10,000 tons of airway base there, 75-foot water tanks, a 100-foot beacon, a seawater distiller, and a pier. Then there was Wake Island. You've heard plenty about Wake, but there wasn't anything there to talk about until us guys made it a place the Japs wanted to take. A 3-island atoll with nobody on it but a lot of screaming frigate birds that hadn't seen a man for 200 years. We had to unload lighters, 2,000 tons by hand. And we had to push those lighters into the lagoon with our own hands, too, standing in 10-foot surf, with those frigate birds screaming at us and us feeling like pirates come to bury a treasure. But the pirates came after, to steal it from us, our work and all. Guess a lot of boys gave their lives to protect all that work we put in on Wake Island. Well, anyway, mister, that's what you left out. All that corn about time and space don't mean a thing. Nothing matters except people, guys, and what they do. And I guess those Japs came to steal that place, and all the good sweat and work we put into it, they're going to find out sooner or later, too.
How about the planes? Well, I don't mean the planes, but us fellas have built them, eh? You can't put your finger on space and time, but you can on us. And then there were the kids who made the weather books. Researched every steamer log for the Pacific in 30 years. They had to go back, like us. We had to go to the museum and measure seagulls. They found what they wanted in the faded logs of sailing ships. American clippers of the 19th century. Sailing ship weather is closer to airplane weather.
So what would you say, then, was a definition of an important voyage?
Well, I don't know. Except that it's got to be a pioneer voyage. That is, if you don't add something new to what you know already, it's not a voyage that means anything. Excuse the words, but, well, it's got to add something to the prestige of man.
All right, then. A voyage of historical significance is the passage of man through time and space in which he gains knowledge or other possessions. That's true. Doesn't the voyage the Japs made to Wake Island fit the definition, too? Look at the prestige they gained at home.
Oh, no. Excuse me, sir. But there you go again. Of course it don't fit. We came to build. They came to destroy. The world goes ahead. The world's on a voyage, too. They're not just stopping us. They're stopping the world. And themselves, too. And someday they'll learn they can't set back our clock without busting their own.
Pardon me for interrupting.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Wells.
Yes?
You talked about the 14 men who stepped out of that plane last January in Singapore shorts. Remember?
Yes?
Well, I was one of them.
Oh?
Yes. I worked on the clipper that made that round-the-world trip. Well, look, you gave everybody the idea that was some sort of hit-or-miss voyage. You made them think that just because we had to give up our regular flight from New Zealand and come home the hard way, that we were just lucky we got there at all. Mr. Wells, we knew what we were doing, just as clearly as we knew what the Japs, were doing. I remember thinking about the night we crossed from Africa to South America. I was lying in my bunk, lying as steady as the moon on our beam. I could see all our guys in the moonlight. John Mack, Roddy Brown, Captain Ford, doing all the things they'd been training themselves for since they started flying. There wasn't any excitement. Nobody was scared. Maybe that was because we weren't just 14 guys after all. We were the sailor here, and this engineer, and all the hundreds of millions of men who've ever sat up late, fooling with a ham radio set or a wheel or an amateur telescope, smiling a little sheepish and proud when their wives come out to look at what they went and made. The war hasn't busted us up, mister. Flying war schedules now instead of peace schedules. But our clock isn't stopping, or even missing a tick.
So a voyage is a passage through time and space that adds to the dignity of man. I think that says it. Good night, Americans.
We approach the new year. America must be prepared to take her place of leadership in the air age, so much of which Pan American has already pioneered. Pan American pioneered from scratch the development of long-range transport planes. Pan American pioneered the fully equipped life-saving raft, the kind that saved Rickenbacker. Pan American pioneered engines completely accessible in flight, self-sufficient multiple crews, long-range aerial navigation. That's why on December 7th, America had the world's greatest system of air transport. Pan American's leadership typifies the vision, patience, perseverance, and determination which must inspire us on to victory. For Pan American has always built not in pace with, but ahead of the times. And victory today is closer because of just such pioneering. Ladies and gentlemen, Lockheed and Vega are proud not only that Lockheed planes are in the service of Pan American, but proud, too, to have brought you a portion of the story of one of America's greatest transportation pioneers. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Edward G. Robinson. I appear tonight for my friend Orson Welles, who is ill and cannot be with you.
The builders of Lockheed and Vega aircraft bring you a story told by Mr. Robinson, who only recently had been sent as a special representative of the Office of War Information to England. He was flown there and came back by boat. And this is the story of what he learned.
That I went to England and that I came back again are relatively unimportant facts. But the reason that my return by ship was uneventful, that's the story I want to tell you tonight. It's the story of how the transporting of millions of your sons and brothers to Europe and Africa has been made possible. There's a battle being fought over that Atlantic Ocean, the Battle of the Eastern Sea Frontier. A hard, tough battle. One of the least publicized of the war, and one that we're winning. The story I'm going to tell you is a mixture of old facts no longer important to the enemy and some new facts scrambled up a bit because, of course, the full story can't be told. Well, not yet. There's a consolidated PBY bomber flying over a certain section of the North Atlantic Ocean. Come on board with me, but never mind asking where we took off from this morning. It could have been somewhere in Iceland or in Newfoundland, down in the Caribbean or along our own mainland. The weather is damp and foggy. The cold winds from below push up on us and the plane bucks them constantly. The ocean below us isn't inviting looking. The waters are restless, repellent, slate gray in color. Since morning we've been flying over one prescribed parallelogram of ocean. It's an 8 to 10 hour duty. The crew is silent, all curiously tense. They seem constantly on the watch for something below. The men curse in low voices. The whitecaps make visibility tough over that ocean surface. Suddenly, the red-headed Texas lad in the tail of the ship stiffens and adjusts his headpiece.
Bombardier to pilot. Couple of points to the east, fella. See anything? Could be.
The plane banks slightly. Eyes all turn in the indicated direction. We lose altitude. Well, sure enough, the sharp eyes of that Texas lad spotted something that isn't a wave or a shark fin on those cold, dark, restless waters. The boys quickly identify it.
Pilot to Bombardier. What'd you think it was? A platter of hot roast turkey with cranberry sauce and mince pie?
All right, so it's another busted orange crate. It's a change from nothing.
Only a broken orange crate on the surface of the Atlantic Ocean. Yet apparently it can't be overlooked. The operator switches his radio to send.
Patrol 16. Patrol 16 calling 4th District. Broken orange crate sighted. Broken orange crate floating. Broken orange crate.
Why should these boys be concerned with a broken orange crate on the surface of the North Atlantic? Who ashore would be concerned? And why are these boys flying anyhow? What are they looking for? It strikes me as a hard, tough, thankless grind, the ceaseless patrolling over this huge gray ocean. Let's find out where that message about a broken orange crate ends up.
Air controller speaking.
Operations Office, 4th District. Another report from patrols on floating debris in vicinity of latitude 3530, longitude 7510.
Was the stuff identified?
Yes, sir. Wish they'd radioed in about one of those long German cigars. They're getting scarce as hens' lower plates. But it was a broken orange crate.
Checked and noted.
The naval officer who just laid down that telephone sits with 5 other men. 2 of them also Navy men. 3 from the Navy at a long table in an extraordinary room. It's a huge, glassed-in, air-conditioned compartment. Something like a radio station's master control room. It exists, this room, somewhere on the east coast of North America. Of course, I can't tell you just where. The enemy would give too much to know. One of the naval men wears a commander's 3 stripes on his sleeve. He bears the title of Air Controller of the Eastern Sea Frontier. He is virtual strategist of the daily war against the Axis submarines in Atlantic waters. Messages keep coming in intermittently to be considered by the 6 men and their importance appraised. Before them hangs a huge metal map, 15 feet high by 30 wide, suspended from the ceiling. Everywhere on this map are little objects that from here look like bugs. What are they, Commander?
Some are shaped like planes, others like submarines, Mr. Robinson. Those clusters there represent convoys bound for Europe, Russia, Africa, and elsewhere.
Oh, yes, I see. Yes, and I noticed that sailor moves them and changes their position. How do they stay on the map?
The markers are metal, and the map is magnetized.
Well, ingenious, all right. This map tells these 6 men at a glance what goes on everywhere over the vast expanse of the Atlantic. It's a rather solemn thought that this room is the nerve center and controls the movements of everything on and above that great ocean. By the way, Commander, how about that orange crate? Why is that important?
Well, by itself, Mr. Robinson, one broken orange crate means nothing. But several objects of the same kind may mean a nearby sinking and possibly floating survivors.
Oh, yes, of course. Well, it's the calmness and the thoroughness of this place that impresses you. Yes, but what are the Army and Navy doing together in this operation? It sounds like an exclusively naval responsibility, whatever it is. We're back with our friends in the consolidated PBY. The sun is going down in that murky, fog-driven sky.
Hang it, I wish we could get a look at one of them Axis U-boats just for the fun of it.
Stick around, chum. You will.
Ain't seen one in 4 days.
You will, sooner or later. Submarines have to surface to charge their batteries.
On that, they pin their hopes. Undersea boats, sooner or later, must come to the surface to breathe and regain their power. And once in a while, too seldom to suit them,
Swing her over a couple of points, fella.
If it's another orange crate, I'll murder you when we get home.
Listen, if that's an orange crate,
Uh-oh. Pilot to Bombardier.
Bombardier to pilot.
Open Bombay.
You fly her, I'll get her.
yes, there it is. Awash, a conning tower. 3 men, 3 German sailors stand there on the ironwork, back to back, watching the skies. Our flaps are extended to cut our speed. Our entire crew is rigid, expectant. The radio operator is rapidly manipulating his equipment.
Patrol 16, subcontact. Subcontact. Latitude, 3530. Longitude, 7510. Subcontact.
The 3 sailors on the conning tower have been watching the skies. Now they sight us. They scramble for safety, apparently shouting their warning. But they don't make it in time. Down, down goes the U-boat in a crash dive, leaving them struggling in the water. Axis undersea commanders no longer have time to think of the safety of their crews. Those 3 watchers are expendables to be expended when aircraft is sighted. Our plane swoops low.
Arm bombs.
Bombs away.
Our big plane drops depth charges ahead of the swirl where the sub dived. Our ship, flying over the explosions, bumps badly. The plane seems to go out of control as the altimeter flutters wildly and the compass spins dizzily. We bank sharply and come back, dropping more charges. Again we bank and return, and again. An oil slick appears on the surface of the water. It may mean death down there to that sea wolf. Crashing, crushing death with tons of water pouring in through ripped steel seams. And then again it might not. Subs these days eject oil to put pursuers off the track. We throw a rubber life raft to the 3 wretched German youths down there in the icy sea and resume our ceaseless patrolling. Did the air control headquarters get the message about the subcontact? The atmosphere in the control room is strained. The air controller glances at his watch as if calculating when he'd get to mess when...
Air controller. Yes?
He leans forward ever so slightly. Something in his voice makes the other 5 men turn to him with a curiously expectant air.
Repeat that, please.
Operations Office, 4th District. Submarine contact reported.
Where away?
Latitude 3530, longitude 7510. We have 2 PBYs ready to take off after it.
You may release them.
Yes, the kind of news they've been waiting for. An Axis submarine has been sighted. The commander turns to his assistant.
3530 and 7510. Mark 2 PBYs from the District J at once.
Well, District F has a couple of Otsikowskis not far from there, sir.
I'll dispatch them.
Yes, sir.
We feel the gathering tension in the room. A vast machine has become aware of the location of an Axis submarine out there in the Atlantic and is moving swiftly to kill it. The assistant is already telephoning District F to send out the Otsikowskis. The commander confers with one of the Army men.
There's an available bomber off point 5, sir.
Have her proceed to the attack and request 2 from the Army field.
Yes, sir.
The major flips on a small microphone and gives orders quietly. Meanwhile, one of the naval men has scribbled orders which go down a pneumatic tube. In a few minutes, 1 or more surface craft on patrol will head for positions 3530 and 7510. Well, now the pattern of the whole thing becomes clear. Now we see the reason for it all. This is a joint Army-Navy operation under the direction of Vice Admiral Adolphus Andrews. Quietly, without fanfare, they've created this mechanism for the watching of an entire ocean. The facilities of one are the facilities of both. Will they get that sub? Our friends have been joined by the reinforcements from shore. The 2 PBYs, the 2 Sikorsky on patrol, the 3 Army bombers. Now miles of sea area can be covered. We drop flares to mark where we sighted the sub. Our one chance is that night is falling. Our boys mutter and curse the luck. Our radio is on. We're in communication with the other plane. Suddenly, we see one of the PBYs bank and...
Ease her off, Fred. They've seen her.
The PBYs drop a flare, but no depth charges. The honor is ours. We saw that sub. Besides, we're closer.
Pilot to Bombardier. All set.
Only 2 of them left, but I'll get her.
We bank sharply, descend swiftly to the level of the flare dancing on that darkening sea. Our bombardier does his duty. The PBY drops another flare. It floats lazily downward, comes to rest on the surface of the sea. It flickers there a moment, then suddenly spreads a little, and a smoky ring appears on the water. An oil slick. Everybody on board listens for the bombardier's report.
Bombarded, all you goons. Sighted south, bombed same, if I must be original. Let's go home. I'm all in.
And that's why I got back to America safely. There will soon come the day, please God, when that vast stretch of ocean now known as the Eastern Sea Frontier will return to its rightful status as a highway free to all, and when the tremendous story of the anti-submarine patrol may be told in all its detail. Meanwhile, its work goes on, its romance and glamour exemplified in that glass-enclosed air-conditioned control room where before their enormous maps sit those quiet men of the Army and the Navy in unified command, and the hard, tough, thankless part of it exemplified in the planes that patrol the enormous stretch of sea from the Caribbean to Iceland. Here, American planes and flying men are doing one of the toughest jobs of the war, and in a sense, one of the least rewarding. A vast trap has been laid for the enemy there in the Atlantic, and patiently men draw the lines tighter until one day they will have drawn a web impossible for the enemy to penetrate. On that day, we shall have won this war. And so, in war, we use the talents God gave us as hostages against defeat and despair, forever keeping before us the image of that for which we are fighting. The hushed and wishful twilight of November, the scent of autumn fires upon the air, and crowning these, the privileges we share, the way of life that is our own to cherish, the purpose and goal for which we dare, the faith we proudly keep that must not perish. Tonight's story, ladies and gentlemen, has been one of teamwork, of the Army and Navy working together to clear the sea lanes of Nazi subs. Much of the action took place in consolidated PBYs, the Navy's Catalina flying boats. But it might also have happened in Lockheed Hudson bombers, for they are teamed together, too, in this job. It's the sort of teamwork that is speeding victory. And the men and women of Lockheed and Vega are proud that their planes are part of the team.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations of Burbank, California, have been honored to present this evening Mr. Edward G. Robinson in the story of the Anti-Submarine Patrol. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. This radio program is brought to you by the men and women of Lockheed and Vega.
I understand your sentiments, gentlemen, and I appreciate them. But I have a special reason for wanting it this way, and I think he'd like it. It should be a simple granite shaft pointing toward the sky.
Splendid. And a bronze plaque with a record of everything he's done, his achievements?
No, just the poem. He liked it so much when he was young. And the word chiseled into the granite. Pilot.
But isn't that rather...
Is it enough?
Well, you gentlemen are all old friends of my son. I think maybe I should explain. Of course, I've known him even longer than you have. That poem, for instance. Even when he was very little, I remember how round his eyes used to get when I'd read it to him. saw the vision of the world and all the wonder that would be, saw the heavens filled with commerce, argosies of magic sails, pilots of the purple twilight, dropping down with costly bale. And then, before we knew it, he was 18 years old.
I've got the framework all finished, Mom. I've even got the engine and the chain, the propeller. All I need now is something to cover the wings, some kind of cloth that's light and strong. Say, how about those swell sheets that you keep in the chest in your bedroom? You never use them.
Those are my cambric sheets, dear. Those were a wedding present from your grandmother.
Cambric? What's that?
It's a very fine, closely woven cotton. There are 24 of them. Will that be enough?
Mom, I've done it. I knew I could. I flew around Mellendorf's windmill 3 times. I can do anything I want to do.
Of course you can.
When Germany marched on Belgium the first time, he went to France and joined the Lafayette Escadrille. He never was much of a letter writer, but when he came home, he brought me some newspaper clippings.
There's a picture of a gang of us getting decorated. That's a French general. That's Baby Roland. He got it over Soissons. That's Stud Reiner. Richthofen got him. That's one thing about flying, Mom. You got to be good, just naturally good. Of course, I had the edge on most of those guys. They had to go to school to learn to fly. I helped invent it.
He married shortly after he got back from the war. A lovely girl she was, but I knew it wouldn't work out. I remember watching her face the night he came home and told us about the barnstorming venture.
There's real money in it, big money.
What in the world is barnstorming?
Just a bunch of fellas, got a fleet of old jennies. We're going to go around to all little hick towns, put on a show for the rubes, you know, loops and barrel rolls and implement turns, make a couple of parachute jumps for our ballyhoo, and then we'll hop passengers for $10 a throw. Of course, it's no place for a woman. I won't be out more than 6 or 8 months.
He never married again. I guess it was just as well. There wasn't much permanence in the flying business in those early days, even though he did own his own business.
Robinson wants to buy us out. I think we ought to sell and go out west where we can really run an airline. How about it, Chuck?
Whatever you say. Mrs. Denny was here again this afternoon.
Oh, what can I do? I can't give her husband back. She knew what to expect. He was a pilot when she married him. It was just in the cards that when he went down through that fog in Pittsburgh, that high-tension line was going to be in his way. I think we ought to sell. We just can't meet the competition here. These big lines are putting in all sorts of gadgets, and that takes dough. Wireless telephones, the newest. Yeah. So the little panty waist won't get lost when they start out on a flight.
No kidding?
Sure. Little Willie Big Shot climbs in the big, bad, dangerous airplane and takes off, and then the flight superintendent calls him up and says, Willie, you better turn around and come back home. Looks like maybe there's going to be a little dew fall over St. Louis.
Get out.
Absolutely. You can't turn around without bumping into regulations. I'm going into town right now and close the deal with Robinson. I won't get what the outfit's worth, but just so I can get out of here, that's all. I want to move.
What's the letter? Post office canceling another contract?
From the Aeronautical Department of Commerce. It says here, we've gone as far as we can, gentlemen, as individuals. We've got to work together, pool our knowledge and research. The radio is one answer to our problems. There's another answer that we must have, and that is the weather.
All pilots will hereafter wear rubbers and carry an umbrella.
If we ever expect to fly passengers and mail express, we must meet schedules. You know, I never missed a schedule yet, weather or no weather. Get a load of this. We've got to know what the weather is going to do before it happens. We must learn the reason for weather. Flying is no longer an individual effort. It's a part of our social and economic structure. And the keystone of that structure is the interdependence of man.
They want to interdependence this outfit for $10,000 to chip at the kitty.
You might send them a piece of that bunion you got that aches every time it's going to rain.
Yeah, they can have their weather charts. I'll keep that bunion. They can have all those fancy blind flight instruments, artificial horizons, and all that malarkey. I'll do my blind flying at the seat of my pants. Listen, Macy, you know something? I was talking to a fellow the other day, just came down from Canada. He mentioned a little proposition.
How little?
Well, it's like this.
The Canadian venture didn't pan out, and he decided to come back home and take a job as an airline pilot.
Hey, listen, Mom. Can you use a good laugh?
What happened, son? Didn't you get the job?
Oh, sure, I got the job, all right. All I have to do is go to school first, learn how to be a pilot.
What?
I'm not kidding, Mom. That's the way it is. We realize you've had a great deal of experience in flying, but after all, experience isn't the only thing. The airline pilot must have an instrument license, a radio license, and a meteorology license. And I said, how about a dog license? After flying crates all over Europe, the United States, and Canada for over 20 years, seems I'm not a pilot.
Well, then, why don't you go to this school?
What?
That is, if you want to be an airline pilot.
Well, I'm not washed up yet. I know where I can pick up an old crate for a few $100, and I know where I can make a living with it.
How?
Crop dusting. You don't have to be a pilot to do that. All you have to do is be able to fly in and out of these fields over high-tension lines and hedge hop over trees and barns all day. Nice, important, romantic work. Killing boll weevils and doodlebugs, but there's dough in it. See, it's too risky for real pilots. Now, don't go getting that look in your eyes.
Georgia, Alaska, Turkey, China. You might put Pathfinder after my son's name, or even Pioneer. But no, I think he'd be proudest of just that one word, pilot. I suppose all mothers feel the same way about their sons, that someday they'll do something that will make them proud. I always knew my boy would. From the very beginning, I knew that sometime, somewhere, he'd get his big chance. It came that night in South America, when the worst sleet storm in history struck at midnight over the Andes.
Good morning, Chief.
What's good about it? Get your feet off my desk. This place looks like a pig pen.
What's the matter? I thought you got that answer from Washington this morning.
Yeah, I got the answer.
Hey, wait a minute. You mean that gang in Washington don't want a guy like you in the Air Corps?
That's the way it adds up. Hand me that glass. $15,000 a ton. Wait a minute. Get a load of this. Therefore, your request for a commission has been denied. However, we feel that the older men can contribute invaluable service to the war effort by assisting with the air transportation of war commodities. Older men. How old's Hap Arnold? He's no chicken. How old's Jimmy Doolittle? You're not kidding me with all this beating around the bush. It's good enough for him in 1918. I invented flying. I'm not even good enough to fly for the lousy airlines.
So you got an airline of your own?
Yeah, flying mules and dynamite into the bush and taking out quinine and chocolate. You call this an airline?
And they wouldn't let me in the Army either. And I've got over 6,000
What
hours.
excuse they give you? They couldn't call you old.
The guy said I was an extrovert.
Should have punched him in the nose.
I did.
Yeah, and some of those nuts tried to follow me over the Mogollon Pass in a sweet stuff. Hey, where you going with that bottle?
You know what the doc said. He said that stuff's bad for your pump.
Nothing's wrong with my pump. Just gets a little vapor lock in it once in a while. Come in.
This is the office of the Ace Airlines Incorporated?
That's right. Close the door, brother. You're letting in the mosquitoes.
I was given one of your cards at the hotel.
Yes?
And if what I read on your card is true, we are indeed fortunate. We fly anything, anywhere, anytime.
That's right.
How soon can you fly from here to the nearest Pan American terminal?
About 4 hours and a half. We don't hold a license for passengers.
This is an emergency. The gentleman whom I will accompany must be in Washington for a very important conference involving vital arrangements for war materials between our country and yours. I'm sure he could waive the technicalities concerning your license.
The only person that can waive those technicalities, brother, is the President of the Republic.
Precisely the gentleman who I'm referring to.
Hold on. You mean you're president?
It is of vital importance, senor.
How about that, Chief? We're coming up in the world, huh?
Looks that way. Where'd it go?
Huh?
The weather report, the Pan American weather report.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding. Where is it?
In a wastebasket, where it always goes.
Take it out.
Okay. What's the matter, boss? Isn't the bunion working?
Bunion's okay.
You mean the weather's okay?
Don't hurt to check the bunion. This is a pretty important trip.
We always got through before, didn't we?
Look at that. Cold front due over Mogollon. It's 11:35.
We always got through them cold fronts before.
One time we won't make it.
You mean you got a hunch?
Don't you understand that we must make connections tonight with the plane for Washington?
It's bad weather over the pass.
We have flown many times in bad weather.
Sorry, it's just a policy of the company.
Are you feeling all right, Chief?
I have been given to understand that you are a pilot who is afraid of nothing.
You have been given to understand correctly.
Then why are we waiting?
For an all-clear weather report from Pan American's traffic department.
It's incredible. Driving here from the hotel, the stars are shining as bright as diamonds. Is it not possible we could get there before this storm you expect?
It's possible.
Money is no object with us, senor.
Money is no object with me either, senor.
Might I suggest a slight addition to your slogan, senor?
What do you mean?
We fly anything, anywhere, anytime, weather permitting.
What happened, Willie?
You got me, Doc. He just sat there getting redder and redder in the face. And then he went over to the closet where he keeps his brandy bottle, and it was empty. And he says for me to beat it down to the cantina and get him a bottle of brandy.
Yes?
Well, when I got back, there he is, dead, slumped over his desk with his head on that weather report.
Didn't anything happen to get him excited and make him real mad, did there?
Did there? I'll say there did.
I know he'd be pleased with the place you selected, gentlemen. I think it's perfect. High out and on a wind-swept hill. He always loved that poem. And as for the inscription, I'm sure that pilot is all that's necessary.
He saw the vision of the world and all the wonder that would be. Saw the heavens fill with commerce, argosies of magic sails, pilots of the purple twilight, dropping down with costly bales. Heard the heavens fill with shouting, and there rained a ghastly dew from the nation's airy navies, grappling in the central blue. Far along the worldwide whisper of the south wind, rushing warm, with the standards of the peoples plunging through the thunderstorm, till the war drum throbbed no longer, and the battle flags were furled in the Parliament of Man, the Federation of the World. Good night, Americans.
This program has come to you from the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations of Burbank, California. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. This radio show is brought to you by the men and women of Lockheed and Vega. Our script tonight was written for us by the distinguished American novelist John Steinbeck. It's the story of a flyer and a flyer's mother. It's the story of the training of a flyer and of the prescience of a mother's love, which is older than the flight of birds.
And now we continue with John Daly in CBS World News.
General MacArthur's headquarters tonight issued a communique reporting the sinking of an 8,000-ton Jap cargo ship in the Bismarck Sea. This morning, reports told of an Allied raid on Jap shipping in Rabaul Harbor. Flying fortresses sank or seriously damaged.
Morning, Mom.
You're late. Sit down and eat your breakfast. You'll be late for school.
It's Saturday. You forgot the day.
Oh, what am I thinking of? Of course it is. Your eggs are a little overdone. Now, how did I think it was Friday? I've lost a day somewhere. Thinking about something else, I guess.
I'll go.
Morning, Jimmy. Morning, Mrs. Carter.
Good morning. Take it out of your pocket. I know what it is.
Oh, it's just an advertisement.
It's from Carl. Give it to me. I've been expecting it.
You think you're a fortune teller.
Why, I guess I am sometimes. Give me Carl's letter.
Read it. Come on, read it.
Just a moment. Turn that down, will you? Dear Mother and Dad and Jimmy, I'm sorry I don't write more and more often. Fact is, they keep us so busy there isn't much time to write. We have been seeing a little action, and I guess we'll see more. I was lucky the other day, and I have a citation. I'm going to send it to you, not to brag, but so you can keep it for me until I get back.
And a medal? Will he get a medal,
since
too?
I went away. I don't know. I got your letters Saturday. They came through quickly. There's not much to tell, except that I am well and busy. I hope you are, too. I'll write again soon when I have more to tell. Love to you all, Carl.
He don't tell anything. He never tells anything. That's the same letter he writes me every time. I've got all of them. I'll write again soon when I have more to tell. Why don't he say what's happening?
Why, he does.
What's happening then?
He's well and busy.
Carl's pretty lucky. He's old enough. When I'm old enough, I'm going in, too.
Of course you will.
Mother, when we get his citation, can I take it to school?
Oh, he might not like that. Why do you want to?
Well, nobody around here ever thought Carl was so brave.
He isn't brave.
What?
He isn't brave at all. Why, when he went in...
Come on, line up, line up. All right, you men. Cutting the shots next. Hurry up, next man. All right, hold out your arm. Watch it. Whoop, catch him, somebody. Yeah, lay him out. He'll come to in a minute. Next man, hold out your arm. There we are. Next man.
He fainted that day. He was afraid of the needle. But the next day, when he took his typhoid shot, he didn't faint. Maybe fear is the foundation of courage.
Well, he must have been pretty good.
No. He wasn't neat. He never put his clothes away.
Just a minute. Carter, haven't you learned to make a bunk yet?
Oh, yes, sir.
You call that a square corner?
But I was...
Remake that bunk and do it until it's right.
Yes, sir.
He hated to be bossed. He used to sulk at home when he was told what to do. And he was never on time for anything.
What time you got, Carl?
It's 10:30.
Oh, clock up there must be fast.
Oh, my gosh. My watch has stopped.
Your watch was stopped. It's a very silly excuse, Carter.
But my watch was stopped, sir.
In the Air Force's, watches do not stop. There are no wrong watches. You will walk post for 3 hours with seat parachutes, and you will think over this curious fact. In the Air Forces, watches are always right.
But he's a good flyer, all right. Look at his citation.
He was frightened. Not afraid, but frightened when his instruction began. He couldn't control his hands.
Don't freeze to that stick. Don't break it off. Now, right turn. Stick and rudder. Easy, they work together. That's good. Now hold it. All right, straighten out. And stop strangling that stick.
His heart swelled up until he could hardly breathe. He didn't think he'd ever learn. He sat on his bunk and he thought he might resign to keep from being washed out. And all the time he was afraid someone would find out how frightened he was.
But he finished. He got his wings. He flies a P-40. I hope. He's got a medal.
Yes, he can fly. Every protesting nerve is hammered into place. Hands that wanted to do wrong things, trained and tempered to do right things. Hours. Long, lovely hours. turning and climbing, diving, flying formation, until it's deep back in his brain. So deep that he doesn't even have to think about it. The hands and heart and nerves, all part of one thing of which the ship is the other part.
I wonder if you'd rather be in Africa than Australia. I'd rather be in Africa. That's the place to be.
The squadron got its orders in the afternoon.
We will proceed to a port of embarkation this afternoon, and you will be on restriction for some time prior to departure.
That night, his last night, he wrote a long, long letter home, 10 pages. He wrote down all his fears, his wondering whether he'd ever come back. He was on a knife edge in time and tipping into a world and a life he'd never known. 10 pages he wrote, and he tried to tell us that he loved us and that he was afraid. He tried to set for all time and for all himself what he was in the world and what his life was. He wrote about death and about fear. And when he'd finished 10 pages, he read them and burned them. He wrote, "We've got our moving orders. I am well and terribly busy. I'll write soon. When I get to where I'm going, I'll give you all the dope. Love to you all."
I wonder what he did to get his medal.
Oh, that was luck. The luck that comes from nerve and muscles forged and hammered into the mold of the job to be done. He was going home. He came out of a cloud, and there were 2 zeros below and ahead of him. It was just luck. He got the first one before they knew he was there. The other one turned and dived. Carl saw the pilot look over his shoulder. He could see his face looking over his shoulder. He saw the face in his sight. And the face disappeared. That was luck.
Golly.
Yesterday wasn't luck.
Yesterday?
The field is small. The jungle comes close in all around, and the tin quarters are hidden under trees. And the field is camouflaged, and the ships are pulled up under the trees.
All in correctly. Rendezvous with BITEs at R4 1432 CGT. Get us escort. Take off at 1502 CGT. Understand?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
sir. Say, Carter here's got 2 meatballs.
Wonder if any beer came in.
They met the bombers over the sea and on the way to the target. They hadn't far to go, for they were near and the bombers had come far. They flew along the green coast, and they could see the white surf piling up on the sand. There was green water, and farther out, blue water below them. And little puffs of clouds were in the sky, and far down the coast, a thunderhead, black with white edges. They saw the harbor and the fire and the ships flying in the bay. The bombers made their run, and the bombs went out. Then the Zeros came out of the thunderhead. And Carl didn't have the luck this time. He turned to attack. And as he climbed, he felt a shock. And the controls were heavy in his hands. He knew he couldn't fight. He strained about to run for it. And his motor was killed.
Then Then what? Then what?
He rolled clear and fell. And his hand went up to the parachute release. But he didn't pull it. I thought he'd never pull it. But he knew better. He was very near the water when he pulled the ripcord, and his body jerked. And he floated into the sea. And a Zero came down after him and ripped the water with its guns. He dove and stayed under until his blood beat in his ears. Then it was over. And he got his belt inflated. He saw one of his squadron go over and wag his ship at him. He was hours in the water before they picked him up.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, pretty lucky I found you. Current carried you away from where you landed. Yeah, grab hold. Yeah, you're pretty pooped. Here, I'll give you a hand.
Was he all right? Was he hurt?
He was all right.
Mother? Say, Mother, how do you know all this?
I was there every minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard a story written for us by John Steinbeck. An old Mercury actress, Betty God, played, we think, very beautifully, the part of the mother. And with her in the cast were Everett Sloane, Carl Frank, Charles Cantor, Peter Donald, Frank Reddick, and Larry Robinson. Please join us next week. Thank you. And good night, Americans.
This program was brought to you by the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations of Burbank, California. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. This radio show is brought to you by the men and women of Lockheed and Vega. The next voice you'll hear will be that of Sergeant Sean Portick Ryan, rigger in the RAF, somewhere in England. Rigger is a sort of a groom to an airplane. It's our job to keep them in shape for their bombing missions and put them back in shape when they come back. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a rare privilege and a deep pleasure for me to be able to say a kind word for what I consider a very great airplane, the Lockheed B-14. Over here in England, we call it the Hudson Bomber. It's dropped more tons of high explosives on Germany than any other American airplane. Another name for it is the Savior of Dunkirk. Most of the pilots refer to it as the maid of all work, or the round tripper. We riggers and men on the line prefer to think of it as old Boomerang, because it always comes back. That is, with very few exceptions. I mind a night not long ago.
Is that you, Sergeant Ryan?
I never say no to a voice like that. Oh, it's young Mrs. James herself. What brings you out here on the strip so late at night?
I got tired waiting over at the hut and thought I'd wait here for them to come back.
Me out here as lonely as a wolf on a rock. Will you sit down now and rest your pretty feet, will you know?
A 500-pound bomb for a chair.
A bomb? Oh, it's the best kind of a bomb, dear lady. Much better than you be sitting on it than sitting on you. Thank your stars you're here and not below and brim in the night.
All the rest of the squadron's back, Sean.
After all, someone's got to be the cow's tail.
Not this late. I'm worried, Sean. What time is it?
8 minutes more. You mean to say...
They've 8 minutes more of petrol. Is that what you mean to say?
Ah, dear lady, the wind blows and who can tell?
You mean if they've had all the good luck, there's still 8 minutes?
Luck's a poor way to say it when you consider all the thousands and millions of people who are out there with them.
There are only 5 men in the bomber.
More than 5,000.
Now you're thinking of prayers.
Prayers are all right. I'm thinking of deeds, not prayers. Though sometimes it's hard to figure out where the prayers leave off and the deeds begin. Take that Hudson that was scouting off the Norwegian coast. It was flying low in a thick haze and struck the sea and then bounced back into the air and arrived back home safe enough. I saw it myself. 3 blades of the starboard propeller bent forward and one on the port, and the starboard engine smashed and the bomb doors torn away, and it came back home. An old boomerang, just like your husband's out in tonight.
Just luck. Good luck, but only luck.
It happens too often to be just luck. No, I have a bit of a theory about the thing, the machines, I mean. That they're more than machines, more than just bits of metal, artfully contrived to fly. Did you ever consider where they come from?
They come from America, in the province of California.
Dear lady, the flying machine comes out of the earth, like everything else. The bomber's no different than a rose that grows out of the earth, but it wants care and intelligence in the growing. The bombers have always been there in the earth, but it wanted people to find the different minerals and weave them into metals on the loom of fire. That's what I'm thinking about when I say there's more than 5 in the crew of a bomber. Consider with me, dear lady, the source, all the many sources and the many hands that go to make up the harvesting of a bomber. With the bits of hard, fine platinum in the electric nerve centers of her engines, there were men in Russia who moiled in the cold, white waters of her mountain rivers. And in far-off China, there were children gathering nuts to make the oil that makes the lacquer for the fine electric nerves of the machine. There were sea captains who carried the cargo crews that worked the ships, and railway workers and teamsters and truck drivers, miners and clerks, and the men that make the machines that make the machines that make the machines. You get the extension. Do you see how it extends till it reaches every living soul on earth and everyone yet to be born? Doesn't leave out one. The school teacher who teaches the children so they may learn the trade that contributes its part. The shoemaker who makes the shoes so they can walk to school. The baker who makes the bread to nourish them. The women who bear these children who grow to be men. All the delicate, intricate parts blended together in the thing we call an airplane. All the products of hunger and hope. And you consider, dear lady, that all the hopes of all the little people everywhere ride with that bomber. They'll not let it fail. For when it fails, the little people all over the world fail with it.
You're talking about all our bombers.
Aye, and you're thinking of only one. One bomber and one man.
It's the nature of a woman to think of her man. What time is it?
Eh?
What time is it?
Did you believe it now? My watch has stopped. There's plenty of time yet.
His tea's getting cold.
Now, take tea, for instance. Have you ever considered tea, dear lady? What a wonderful thing it is. I mind the winter when I was a boy coming home across the bogs. You keep the trail in the bogs, one little error of judgment, one misstep, and maybe they'll find your cap in the morning, but likely nothing at all. The world goes on.
I don't know how I can face it.
We were considering tea and not me drowning in the bog, for I didn't, as you can plainly see. I'm far too solid and noisy for a ghost. Now, when I was a lad picking my way home, the shirt on my back heavy and stale with sweat, and the marrow drawn out of my bones from the hard work I'd been doing, my mind would run ahead of me like a hungry dog and smell the tea brewing in the brownstone pot. And then my mind would run back like a dog again, and I'd smell the tea in my very nose. It'd put a wing in my heart. And yet before I could get that cup of tea, men had to learn how to make ships and sail them and to cut forests and fashion trees into strong timbers, and other men had to go and search out the far places of the world and find the herb and bring it back, all for a wee cup of tea. So did you consider, dear lady, that I was not walking the bog alone that night? The world walked with me, and the world helped my mother brew that cup of tea, just as the world is flying with your husband tonight.
Please tell me the time. I can hear your watch ticking. It hasn't stopped.
Aye, dear lady, my watch can't tell you the time, for it can't measure the winds. They'd had fair winds coming back from Bremen. There's still time. We never give up, you know, till we're sure. And then we don't give up.
The rest of the squadron's given up. I could tell when I stopped by the hut. Casual is the word for Mrs. James, lads. Tell her about the new Mickey Mouse film at the Crown this week. Then dress her in crepe with your worried young eyes.
Ah, no.
Oh, Sean, it's no good pretending. This is it. I know it is. I've been expecting it ever since the war first started. But I didn't think I'd behave so badly when it did come.
Dear lady, come now. What's that? The searchlights over the Firth are groping for something. We'd better stand over here in the lee of the revetment. Maybe a German.
I don't hear the motors.
Nor I. Maybe they found a way to silence them. It's coming this way. There goes light 14. He's on it. Can you make out the silhouettes?
No, I can't see anything, but it can't be.
We'll know in a moment when our light hits it. There! They got it now, Mother of God, dear lady. It's our Hudson coming back on a dead stick, gliding back to her own runway. That's the recognition signal blinking now. Look, dear lady. Can't you see it?
I can't see anything. My eyes... Are you sure?
Of course I'm sure. Can't a mother blackbird pick out her own in a flock of 1,000? It's the old boomerang come back home again. It always comes back, dear lady. They're circling into the wind now.
Oh, dear. Ronnie will be put out. His tea is as cold as his stove.
That was a story by John Tucker Battle called Mrs. James and a Pot of Tea. The dear lady was Miss Agnes Moorhead, and the rigger was played by your obedient servant. John Steinbeck wrote a story for this program. We think it's one of the best things we've ever had a chance to do on the air. It's a very short story, though. So short we've had to wait for another story short enough to give us room for it. I'm very glad that we found time for it this week. You're going to hear it now. It's called With Your Wings. He knew most of all that he wanted to go home. But there was something at home he had to get. He didn't even know what it was. During the long, hard training, there hadn't been time to think of himself, nor to want anything. The ceremony at the end was unreal. He stood with 16 others, all of them rigid as cypress logs, and the silver wings were pinned to his blouse over his heart. There was a speech by the colonel. The half of his mind heard it. The other half was going home. He walked to his Model A Ford, got in, slammed the door. From the corners of his eyes, he could see the gold bars on his shoulders. The silver wings were heavy over his heart. He started the clattering open roadster, listened for a moment to the slapping pistons, and drove away in the sunny golden afternoon. The front wheels waggled loosely. He let the steering wheel slip back and forth in his hands. A training plane flew over and banked. He glanced up and knew that the pilot was not going home. Now he was frightened of his success. He tilted his cap a little, sat very straight behind the wheels. Then he turned off the highway into the rutted lane. The meadowlark flew ahead from fence post to fence post, singing his coming like a herald. The young cotton was strong and dark and clean in the fields. The porches of the cottages were crowded as he drove by. Children washed and dressed in their best and starchiest clothes, hair bursting with ribbons. The older people standing behind on the porches. At each house, they watched him pass, and then the families walked solemnly down the steps into the lane and followed him, like people going to church. Men and women and children in their best clothes. He could see them in the sun-cracked rearview mirror, moving into the lane behind him. His own folks were standing on the porch waiting for him. His father in white shirt and black string tie and dark church clothes. His lean chin held high. His mother in her blue and white print dress, each hand in front of her, holding the other to keep it from escaping.
His grown sister, pretty and breathless, her lips a little open. His young brother, with eyes so wide that his forehead wrinkled up. Second Lieutenant William Thatcher stopped his car and got out slowly and moved slowly toward the porch. And the gathering neighbors came up behind him. He'd planned how it would be. He'd treat the whole thing casually, as though it were nothing at all. He'd planned to say, "Hello, Pa." Kiss his mother and sister, pick up his little brother, tousle his hair. But it wasn't like that at all. It wasn't nothing. It was something. He walked slowly toward the porch and stood looking up at his father. He could hear the rustle of the neighbors as they moved silently near, formed a half circle behind him. It was as though his own people were sitting in judgment on him. The sun was warm on the porch and on the roses against the porch, and the sun was hot on his golden shoulder bars. He could see them shine from the corners of his eyes. He'd thought to come home in triumph, and it wasn't that at all. He took off his cap with the gold eagle on it, held it in his hand. He saw his tall father lick his lips. And then his father said softly, "Son, every black man in the world is going to fly with your wings." And then he knew. His breath caught sharply against his throat. He climbed the steps and went blindly past them and into the house and into the bedroom where he had grown up. Lieutenant William Thatcher lay down on the white bed. His heart was pounding. He could hear a little quiet murmur of voices in front of the house. He knew they were going to sing in a minute. And he knew now what he was to them.
This program has come to you from the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations of Burbank, California. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles. This radio show is brought to you by the men and women of Lockheed and Vega. I'm speaking to you from the main waiting room at the LaGuardia Airport, New York City. The date, by the way, is February 1st, 1946.
Boston, Halifax, Belfast, Liverpool, and London. All aboard. Amazon Express leaving at gate 3 in 5 minutes.
Have a good trip, honey. Have you forgotten anything?
No, I don't think so. You packed my raincoat in the big bag?
Yes, and your Palm Beach suit and your heavy underwear. Oh, yes, and your dress suits in the small trunk along with your white flannels and warm woolly topcoat. You'll be back tomorrow night.
Yes, I have to stop at Rio on the way back. Herrera lives 400 or 500 miles out of town. You know air cabs. Takes them half a day to find a number, even if it is painted all over the roof.
Daylight limited for Cairo, Egypt, leaving on runway 82 in 5 minutes.
Is that my plane, the Daylight Limited? I'm going on to Cairo.
Yes, madam. May I see your ticket, please?
West Africa Special, leaving on runway 54.
Darling, please be sure and remember to return Mrs. Amaja's bag in Buenos Aires. She forgot it last weekend.
All in order, madam. Gate 82.
You're sure we won't need a passport?
Oh, no. All that'll be necessary is your certificate of health.
Oh, but we're going on from Cairo. We're going clear around the world. Won't we need a passport anywhere?
Oh, no, madam. Passports were abolished during the Second World's Congress.
Arctic Express, last call.
Of course, I knew that, but I thought maybe... what I meant to say is we don't want to run into any wars or anything like that in some uncivilized part of the globe.
Well, there hasn't been a war since
I beg your pardon, but when's the next plane for Moscow?
Oh, there's a London's Commuter Express leaving in 3.5 minutes, sir. You can change in England.
Say, I left my commutation ticket at home this morning. Can I buy a one-way ticket?
Eastern Express making connections for India at gate 9.
word about the South American Express?
I'm not taking it, don't you remember? I have to go to Lisbon first.
Oh, of course. That's why you took your raincoat. Well, have fun, and I'll see you tomorrow night, unless you call.
I've got a month vacation coming up in July. Think I'll take the family over. Got an 8-year-old boy who's never been to China.
Australia Special leaving in 3 minutes, gate 6. Last call for Daylight Limited.
Dear me, I'd better hustle.
Oh, take the pneumatic conveyor to runway 32, madam. You've plenty of time. Landing strip's only 2 miles away.
You be careful flying back home, and please, dear, watch what you're doing when you put the plane in the garage. Goodbye, darling.
$1946. Honolulu's an overnight hop from Chicago. You can fly the Pacific for $1.50 a mile, and if you want to impress your girlfriend, buy her a quarter's worth of orchids flown up this morning from Brazil. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a radio broadcast, but it isn't a hoax. Any resemblance to the men from Mars is purely accidental. It may interest you to know that everything, absolutely everything you've heard in the past couple of minutes, no matter how fictional it seems, is entirely possible, not next year or in 1946 or 1950, but right now. These aren't wild pipe dreams or blueprints or pulp magazine stuff. For months, the machinery which would make these miracles possible has been rolling off aircraft assembly lines. Just now, of course, our airplanes have more important things to do than to take you to Rio for a weekend.
All right. You know what to do.
Sure. Down the funnel. Letter written.
Hold your hats, gentlemen.
Steady. Steady as you go. Bombs away. Solid, Jackson.
That Jap battleship is one dead duck. That's it, gang. Everybody bail out. Orders.
How about you, Cap?
Take care of yourself. Don't worry about me.
The rest jumped clear. But the pilot never had time to bail out. Somehow you can't help wondering if anything, even a Japanese battleship, is worth the life of a man like Colin Kelly, Jr.
In the conviction that the service and example of Captain Colin P. Kelly, Jr. will be long remembered, I ask for this consideration in behalf of Colin P. Kelly III.
That's the passport to an education for Corky Kelly, age 3, signed by the President of the United States. And that answers the questions, really. All the suffering and sacrifice, it does pay off and make sense, on one condition. If it means a better world for Colin P. Kelly III. This program is about tomorrow. AW, children call it. After the war. You've seen those hopeful, happy ads showing some man of the future shopping in his small-town sales hangar for a new plane. Those ads are true because we're going to win the war and there will be airplanes instead of, as well as cars for people to ride in. Plain people, little people. But still, is this man you?
Could be my Joe a few years from now. He's in Guadalcanal. That's where he is, I think. Always crazy to fly. Never had the chance yet.
Or it could be an Eskimo ice fisher in Unalaska, a gland patient in a Texas sanatorium, a diver in a San Francisco harbor, a county doctor back in the Mississippi swamplands.
Yeah, or me, for instance. I got me a little sheep ranch up in North Dakota. The wife, she's a Bible woman. Also what you might call literal-minded. And when the book tells her love thy neighbor, it irks her she only gets a chance to do it 3 or 4 times a year. That's when we make the trip to Chickasaw for supplies, meet the Davises that live just around Bear Point, 70 miles up the pass. I got a hunch it ain't just because she feels it her duty. She really does enjoy it when her and Mrs. Davis get together, give each other pot holders they've crocheted, and swap yarns about what they've been cooking the last few months. I know Harry Davis and me has a good time. After the buy-in's done, it's a glass of beer here and chocolate bar there. And always, no, it's got to be my treat now. Till before you know it, it's late afternoon, time to be getting back. Now, the way you were talking, why, I suppose we could be real neighborly. Just fly across like how to do and visit the Davises at their place.
Oh, yes, you could be neighborly. This earth would bow, furling its mountains and its miles while you slipped over to call on the Davises. There'd be other neighbors for you, too. Down in Colorado, over in Ontario. Distances cease to be the limbo beyond Chickasaw Corners. Become just the swift little breezes sparkling past your wings. The advertisement, that picture of the man, whoever he is, buying his little plane, becomes an expanding dream. The transports, tomorrow's work planes, flying that Eskimo to the University of Chicago, beating death to the bedside of that country doctor's patient. Higher and swifter, flashing through the dead shadows of national boundaries and man's abject isolation from his neighbor.
But, Mr. Wells, how do we know our kids are going to be better off? How do we know it isn't going to happen all over again in another 20 years? Worse than the last time. What are we really fighting for?
Well, that's the biggest question in the world, which doesn't mean we shouldn't try to answer it. Please turn to page 3 of Time magazine for November 9th, 1942. Got it?
Mm-hmm.
Read it.
What kind of a world are we fighting for?
That's the lead line in a 2-page advertisement of Pan American World Airways.
Herewith we present a statement written for Americans and people throughout the world by the Most Reverend William Temple, the Archbishop of Canterbury.
The structure of life as we knew it before the war has already been profoundly modified. How far do we want to restore it if we can? I offer these suggestions as a goal to aim at immediately. Every child should find itself a member of a family housed with decency and dignity, so that it may grow up in a happy fellowship unspoiled by underfeeding or overcrowding, by dirty and drab surroundings, or by mechanical monotony of environment. Every citizen should have a voice in the conduct of the business of industry which is carried on by means of his labor, and the satisfaction of knowing that his labor is directed to the well-being of the community. After the war, every citizen should have sufficient daily leisure, with 2 days of rest in 7 and an annual holiday with pay, to enable him to enjoy a full personal life. Every citizen should have assured liberty in the forms of freedom of worship, of speech, of assembly, and of association for special purposes. That's what the spiritual head of the Church of England has to say about the world for Corky Kelly. What keeps us from realizing that world? Here's America, the world's granary. But the hungry people don't get the grain. America is the world's hospital, but the patients don't arrive in time. America is the world's university, but the students can't enroll. Ever since the beginning of time, our fruitful heritage has been knotted up, congested, blocked, because the trade avenues were so narrow. The road from Sao Paulo to Archangel, from Des Moines to Hankow, was never wide enough or fast enough. Well, it is now.
heard that sound many times on this program. It's a simple sound effect. We've tried to make it more than that. We nominate that noise as a flag for the future. A trumpet call announcing tomorrow. The day to come when the bomb sites are dismantled and the guns are taken off and the steel armor removed, and man, the common man whose century this is to be, rebuilds his cities. Tomorrow. Just between us, Corky, I'd swap lifetimes with you, sight unseen. Ladies and gentlemen, this series of broadcasts is continuing at this same time. But for a while, the Mercury Theater is going off the air. Next week, my friend Ronald Coleman will tell you the story about Douglas Dauntless, the world's greatest dive bomber. We very much wish it were possible for us to go on writing and producing these radio plays. We've never been happier. We've never been as proud of an association in any medium, any time in our life as a theater company. The Mercury is proud to have been part of a great industry. We're proud of the men and women of Lockheed and Vega. We leave with real regrets. It's not easy this time to say good night, Americans.
This program has come to you from the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporations of Burbank, California. Be with us again next Monday night when Ronald Coleman tells the story of the Douglas Dauntless. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Ceiling Unlimited.
Man has always looked to the heavens for help and inspiration. And from the skies, too, will come his victory and his future.
Hello, Americans. This is Orson Welles, speaking for the men and women who make Lockheed and Vega aircraft. If you will turn back the pages of your favorite magazine to the advertising section of a recent issue, you'll find a striking message sponsored by Lockheed and Vega's brothers in aviation at Vultee. A message based on a most provocative illustration. The fellow with a familiar small mustache, the lunatic fringe of hair, the paranoiac eyes, reaching for the globe, while four phantom figures watch him anxiously. King Philip II of Spain, Louis XIV of France, Napoleon, the Kaiser, looking on in envy as the madman reaches out to put a strangling grip upon the world. And underneath the captions, simple and significant, Hitler came the closest. Well, that's true, of course, he did. And how do you think the others feel about it? Philip, Louis, Napoleon, the Kaiser, the other four who might have ruled the earth. Where are they now? Into what far corner of oblivion have they retired? What are they thinking as the tide of centuries rolls by?
Excellency, if I may ask it, why have you invited us to attend this conference?
Ah, Monsieur Napoleon, restless as always. Are you uncomfortable, perhaps a little warm? Believe me, you'll get used to it in time. Another century or two.
But, Senor, for a conference like this, where are the others?
Caesar and Charlemagne.
Yeah, and Genghis Khan.
Oh, I could have asked a dozen others like yourselves, but most of them are rather old. You four, I thought, would be the most compatible, having so very much in common.
Monsieur, I trust you do not class me with these paltry fellows.
Senor Napoleon, you speak of Philip II of Spain. Look to your manners, sir. I am the oldest here.
The oldest?
Yes, the oldest, not the most important. I have more pages in the Encyclopedia Britannica. Excellency, is not that true?
Quite true, Monsieur Napoleon. A most absorbing record filled with the greatest victories. Barring Waterloo, of course.
Waterloo. Why must you always remember Waterloo? No man ever faced a judge. The world was leagued against me then.
What of my world, monsieur? Have you not heard of the Grande Alliance? All those nations banded against Louis XIV?
Yeah, me too. In 1918, I'm fighting the whole world. Senores, believe me, it is not how many, but how strong those stubborn Dutch.
How can you reckon them against
Gentlemen! Thank you. You understand, of course, I do not underrate the work that any of you did for me on Earth. Of course, comparisons are always odious.
To whom could you compare us, sir?
Well, there is a man on Earth today, a genius of a fellow, an organizer. He plans to turn the whole world like a mill and grind out what he needs.
What? The entire world?
Oh, yes. And even that might not be quite enough for him. He even looks on me with something of disdain. He thinks my red flannels are a bit old-fashioned. I'm afraid he hopes one day to take my place.
To rule here in your place, monsieur? Who is this man?
If you will turn your attention to the wall, look at the map.
A map? Oh, I had not noticed this before.
Natuurlijk, Wilhelm. It wasn't there.
Caramba, this is a strange map, senor.
Yes, Philip, a very special map. It breathes and pulses with the world. It trembles, shudders, sometimes even cries aloud.
If I may say it, sir, this is a devilish clever thing.
Monsieur Napoleon, you flatter me.
Look at the map. Some parts are turning red. Why do they turn red, monsieur?
Oh, at times your ignorance is monumental. It's blood that turns those countries red. The blood of men and women, flowing as only rivers flowed in your benighted days.
All this is blood.
Look at the map, Monsieur Napoleon. Starting there from Germany, see how the bloody torrent races on. See how it sweeps upon the Czechs. You hear those cries? Those are the cries of Lidice, despoiled and ravaged, ground to dust beneath an army's iron heel.
Yeah, this is very systematic.
That distant thunder now, that's Poland, Warsaw. Such a proud and lovely city, crumbling in upon itself. The ghetto and the boulevard at last, united in their common ruin. Rather thorough, don't you think?
Where next?
Next to the north. Norway takes a mere few days, you see. Then south again, the lowlands, Rotterdam.
Oh, stubborn, though.
But this time, Philip, their stubbornness is no defense. In 30 minutes, 30,000 of them die.
30,000? Santa Maria.
No, don't thank her, my friend. Thank me. My friend. You did your best on Earth, of course, or should I say, your worst. But possibly your talents weren't scaled for things like this.
What things, senor?
Great battles that are named for oceans and for countries, not for streams or towns or puny villages as they were in your day. Death multiplied 1,000,000 times. Whole centuries destroyed in half an hour or less. Yes. This fellow Hitler serves me very well indeed.
Hitler. I do not recall the name, monsieur. What is his family?
Well, Louis, there seems to be some doubt about his ancestry.
Yes, senor, to do all this, he must be a most great general. Natürlich, Philip. Is he not trained in Germany in my war?
Wilhelm, in your war, the fellow was just a bad corporal. I like to think his training came from me.
Hitler. Monsieur, which Hitler is this one? Hitler first or fourth or eighth or what?
Those foolish men on Earth. They say he will be Hitler the last.
But first or last? You mean for him to conquer all the earth?
That is my plan, Monsieur Napoleon. Oh, what a pretty picture that will be. All men reduced to craven slavery, food bought with tears and suffering, new life created just to be destroyed, in spite of the resistance of such people as the Free French, the English, the Norwegians, the Russians.
Monsieur, you mean this Hitler has invaded Russia too?
Oh, yes. Monsieur Napoleon, my sympathy, if that brings certain bitter memories to you.
Oh, it will to him too. Excellency, this is where he fails. He makes the same mistake.
Oh, no, my friend. You see, he has an instrument you didn't have.
A new weapon, senor? A new gun, yeah?
Oh, more than that, much more. Something that projects through time and space, that reaches to the furthest corners of the earth.
With such a weapon, I could have ruled the world. Why did you give it to him?
Ah, but I didn't, Monsieur Napoleon. I didn't give it to him. It was designed to be an instrument of peace and brotherhood. But mankind put it squarely in his hand and begged naively for their own destruction.
But, Excellency,
of course, they didn't realize it at the time. That's precisely where my Hitler's genius lies, to take an instrument they meant for good and warp and twist it to my ends. Those silly, stupid men on Earth. They thought they could escape me in the skies. They spread their little mortal wings and tried to fly. And then I spoke to him, a little whispered word that made him smile in gratitude. How well he understood. How happily he took those human wings and made them beat with fury and with rage, the very wings those other foolish ones had built in joy and hope. Believe me, gentlemen.
Majesty, your humble servant.
You have returned most opportunely, I should say. What have you to report?
Nothing, Majesty. I had no luck at all.
You went as I directed you?
Oh, yes, Majesty. I traveled far and wide through all America.
Yes?
I went to Vultee first.
Yes?
The women working at the machines, I thought they'd be the easiest.
Yes?
I reasoned, pleaded, tempted them in every way I knew.
Well?
They wouldn't stop their work. They simply smiled and said, "The devil with you."
And what about the men?
I went to Lockheed, Majesty. Those men were difficult. I whispered to them. I said, "I work so hard, they'll pay you just as much money for less work. What do you care what happens later?"
What did they say?
All the same thing, Majesty. They said I could go straight...
Enough! You failed me then.
I couldn't help it, sire. If you could see America awake, aroused...
Excuses, nothing but excuses. Begone, you idiot. Out of my sight. Fools, you fools! That woman and that man are making planes.
Planes, monsieur?
Yes, planes. The instrument I hoped that he alone would use.
You gave Hitler that advantage?
How else could his greedy fingers span the earth? How else could he come so close to all the things you dreamed but never did? How else but through the air? So close. Not have failed so miserably.
Ah, then he fails too, as we failed.
I know America. They'll answer him 5 planes for 1. Destroy him in the very flames I showed him how to light. One day he'll merely be a name that's gone, like all the rest of you.
If I may say so, sir, he'll make a notable addition to our group.
I doubt if he'll enjoy it much, monsieur. For one who fails me so colossally, I have a plan.
A very special plan, no doubt.
A very special plan. One day I'll give him all airplanes that are made.
Senor!
And all the guns and powder, all the armament.
Monsieur, you can't. It isn't fair to us.
Senor, you give him everything. Yes, everything. Everything but men.
No men, monsieur?
Since he has learned to hold all human life so cheap. No men.
No men. Excellency, my compliments. A most ingenious plan. No man. This will be pure hell for him.
Well, after all, Monsieur Napoleon, precisely where do you think you are?
Any further orders, Majesty? Or is that the end of it?
Is it the end or just a new beginning I must make? You see, I know the world rather well. Don't I, world? You're tired, aren't you? You're weary with the sight of blood and suffering. You wish the war were done and over with. And what will happen when it is? Shall I tell you, world? Shall I tell you what you'll do? You'll sit about a table and contrive a peace and document it with the same mistakes you made before. You'll tell yourself that never can there be a war again. And you'll relax. Oh, yes. You'll grow quite fat and lazy in the luxury of your delusion. That's when I'll be back again. That's when I'll add another figure to the 5 you met tonight. A man who will not fail me as the others have. A man who... Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me. I think I've had enough playing the devil. And just for a moment, I'd like to be Orson Welles, taxpayer and citizen. Let's give the devil his due. He's given us a lot of trouble in the past and promised us a lot more for the future. Unless, of course, this scourge of fire and brimstone that we suffer now will shock us to eternal vigilance. But will it, Americans? Will it? What is our defense against it? The answer, I believe, was stated in the text from which our fable sprang tonight. Hitler came the closest by using the air. Remember, Americans. Remember, world. And never again be unprepared. Never again be caught with folded wings while madmen fly across the sun and put the shadow of despair upon the earth. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say here how very nice it is to be back again, even for a short visit, with my old and good friends who bring you this program. We had a real Mercury cast tonight, and that was nice, too. Here it is. Napoleon was George Coulouris. Philip, Pedro de Cordova. Louis, Joe Kearns. The Imp, Lou Merrill. Hans Conried was the Kaiser. This is Orson Welles speaking for the men and women of Lockheed and Vega. I'm proud to speak for them. Thanks for listening. And until next time, I remain as always, obediently yours.
Next week, our guest will be Joey Brown, newly returned from the South Pacific. Tonight's story was written by Harry Cronman. The music was written and directed by Anthony Collins. This program has come to you from the Lockheed and Vega Aircraft Corporation of Burbank, California. Patrick McGeehan speaking. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
That was Ceilings Unlimited starring Orson Welles. Orson Welles had other popular programs like the Campbell Playhouse, Mercury Theater, The Shadow, and several Shakespeare plays, but we wanted to play his lesser-known programs. Well, that is it for this week for Airchecks. Airchecks is normally a 3-hour podcast that is uploaded every Saturday and played on the K-Tai radio network every Sunday. See you at the same time and same channel.